Yo gamers, my name is Flaws. This is yet another React video. I basically do these bi-weekly, and since we are on the genre of speedrunning, I thought, you know, why not react to the history of speedrunning? It's 2 hours long, huh? Well, I am gonna try to quote-unquote tough it out, because I think this is gonna be high quality and really good, a good watch. Of course, this was recommended by Skolry once again. So yeah, and also here is a little P5 update. Well, I actually did get to the last boss on stream. I did it live for the first time, first day. So if you guys want to watch that, it is in the live section of my channel. So I've put down a timestamp in the description because I finished Outlast DLC a bit too early, and then I was like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And you know, then I was like, should I do like one practice run of P5? And well, I mean, just see for yourself. Just see for yourself. It was really nice. So yeah. This video is really long, so this is gonna be from BlueSR. I don't know what the SR stands for. The History of Hollow Knight World Records. And I think it's gonna be amazing. I already know that. Well, I don't already know that, but you know, such a long video, it's ambitious. It's really ambitious. I wonder how long this video is gonna render, actually. So, let's just get straight into it. I hope that I'm not gonna be in front of anything. Of course, we're joined by Marcy, Pure Vessel, Arthas, Floor Shepherd. Yeah, Floor Shepherd, I call him that. The Beast, the Knight, Melania Radan. Let's get fucking into it, okay? Oh yeah, I should really say what I usually say in these intros. So grab yourself a snack and enjoy the video. I'm gonna turn up. This video is dedicated to the Hollow Knight speedrunning community, Team Cherry, the creators of the game.
Today marks exactly 8 years of Hollow Knight being released into the world.
Okay.
After all this time has passed, it's really no surprise that any % no major glitches, the game's most famous and competitive category,
that is so
has
hard.
amassed a truly rich and exciting history.
He didn't even get it?
Seconds shaved, fascinating strat discoveries, minute barriers broken, and, of course, masterful displays of skill and passion from the runners who dedicated themselves to pushing the very limits of what's possible.
Oh yeah, also I basically just woke up from a nap. It's like 10 PM. I don't know why I'm mentioning this.
This video is a celebration, not only of the game, its developers, and its speedrun, but also to the individual and community efforts that made the current world record possible. So, let's go back 8 entire years.
This is interesting. The thing is, of course, I'm gonna pause a bit. You know, I'm gonna try not to pause as much, but we did watch Lep do world second record. And I heard, like, recently, like 5 days ago maybe, that he has actually beaten the world record. He was 10 seconds earlier than his last round, so that's fucking cool. I'm not gonna react to that because it's gonna be the same run, just with fewer mistakes.
This is gonna be a long one. This is the world record history of Hollow Knight speedruns.
Let's go! Blue.
The day is February 24th, 2017. Team Cherry releases Hollow Knight into the world, and it's by all means a success.
Did you guys see that Abyssal Streak
by other releases,
animation?
But is considered a sleeper hit, with a tight-knit, active, and growing community of players, some of which quickly become interested in speedrunning the game. New players are encouraged to peruse into the hobby through the game's speedrun achievements, and the speedrunning community is supported by the developers in the game's official Discord server. All of this sets the stage for someone to perform the first ever proper speedrun of Hollow Knight. On March 2nd, 2017, about a week after the game's release, a runner by the name of Spleen finished their first time of 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 30 seconds.
Okay.
Setting a starting point for all to come. There are probably earlier runs, but this one was the very first to be performed.
So wait, what was Lep's speedrun? It was 31 minutes, wasn't it? Holy fuck, it's such a big increase.
Without major glitches and with the game's load time remover that was quickly developed by a person named Devil Squirrel. Sadly, this run was not recorded, so it's really hard for us to know the details of it. We need not fret, however, as only a week later, Spleen would return with a significant improvement, shaving off a solid 7.5 minutes. And this
That's
time,
pretty
he
fast.
also made sure to press the record button. The run
Okay, I'm
followed
still
a
not in
routing
front of
that
anything, good.
relatively closely resembled the game's quote-unquote
Primal
intended
ass pits!
route. There were some early glitch and skip finds in there that showed just how quickly the initial runners found things, though. For example, in the very first seconds of the run, Spleen did this menu early control and imagery drop into King's Pass. Basically, by
Oh,
pausing, the player was able to gain control of their character well before they usually would.
smart.
And the imagery opening in midair removes the player's fall acceleration cap. This allowed Spleen to fall past terminal velocity, as well as cancelling the hard fall stun animation when landing.
Okay,
Spleen's
smart.
run also featured another staple of all speedrun routing to come, so-called bench hard save anchoring. In Hollow Knight, your progress is saved periodically, but you always respawn at the latest hard save point, such as the latest bench you sat at after
Okay,
going out to the menu.
I know that.
So, in Spleen's run, he would hard save an Ancestral Mound after Vengeful Spirit, traverse Green Path to get the dash ability, and then simply quit back out to menu to essentially fast travel back to that bench, skipping tremendous amounts of backtracking. There were even a few skips in Spleen's run. In Watcher's Spire, Spleen performed one of the only known big skips at the time, the Spire Statue Pogo, to reach the area without the Monarch Wings. Earlier in the run, he would also lure this squid for a pogo in Green Path, cutting a much faster route through the area.
That's
in
insane.
about
I
20 seconds.
I thought that was first way later on, but he was just like doing it here. Because we saw that in Lep's run as well, which is...
Was also clever enough to dreamnail bosses for Soul, and despite fighting bosses with Fury of the Fallen, he only died twice in the run. With our hindsight, it's easy to think of ways this run could be drastically improved. Do keep in mind though, that most skips and strategies we take for granted today weren't even close to being discovered, so runs were forced to take much longer detours in order to gain abilities such as the Desolate Dive and Isma's Tear. According to the runner in the description of the video, they were also just fucking around and didn't even mean to record the run in the first place. And sure, there were many time losses, but it was an impressive feat considering it happened only a fortnight into the game's life.
Is this loud enough for you guys? Maybe just a smidgen more? Just smidgen?
Lifetime. Only a few hours later, Spleen beat their own record by another 3 minutes, finishing with a time of 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 1 second.
Okay.
There's also no video of this run, but it's likely that the time save came from a bit of everything. In the following week,
a bit of
Spleen would
everything,
continue
yeah.
to run the game, beating their own record by 3 minutes on the 11th. The routing stayed similar to his first run, with most of the time save coming
I should
from
actually
increased confidence
sit back and
memory of the
relax
game
in my
instead.
chair here.
Spleen had
We're here
also
for a
gotten
while.
better at the boss fights, with the much cleaner Watcher Knights and Dung Defender fight in particular.
Desolate Dive is really good for Dung
Movement as
Defender.
well, attempting to dash whenever.
But did we ever see... Did we... I don't remember seeing Lep kill Dung Defender. Is Dung Defender really necessary to kill? I don't know.
Could in order to maximize his horizontal velocity. And once he had C-Dash, he implemented some longer C-Dashes for segments that he had previously dashed. This time, he did lose some time after a fumbled Umu fight, where he almost died and killed the boss in 5 entire cycles. But better navigation of Deep Nest and a much better Hollow Knight fight led to a time of 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 6 seconds.
Okay.
And then, 2 days later, Spleen would beat the world record again. And in this run, there were some big changes for the better in the routing department.
Is anyone else even trying? Hello? Is Spleen just the king? I know he doesn't have the world record right now, but is Spleen just the king? He was the king. Doesn't it just look comfy with all these posters? I don't have time for this, sorry.
For one, he finally stopped picking up Soul Twister in Soul Sanctum, a charm that he had been getting for no reason and not even equipping. This saved him about 20 seconds. More significantly, Spleen made a change to the Crystal Peak segment.
Nice little save there.
He performed this skip to reach an 800 Geo relic, which would help him afford the Lantern later. And more importantly, he didn't quit out after Crystal Heart. Instead, he took this path through a dark room to the Crystallized Mound and grabbed Ascending Dark as a combat upgrade. This would net him consistency and time save in the 4 upcoming boss fights of Watcher Knights, Dung Defender, Umu, and the Hollow Knight. The early Geo Relics meant he could sell to Lem on the way down to Waterways, and instead of quitting out from Isma's Tear, he climbed up to Right Side City through Eternal and Malicious House. After the Watcher Knight fight in Lurien, Spleen went right to the King's Station with a few quick crystal dashes, and stagged to Dartmouth for the Lantern purchase. Using Isma's tier, he could now travel to the teacher's archives through this entrance in the crossroads.
Oh yeah,
which
Isma's
was much
tier.
faster than the long trek through city and fungal wastes that he had done before.
Okay.
After acquiring Monomon the teacher, he entered the fungal wastes through the Queen Station stag and entered Deepness through the crumbling pit entrance. And then, after getting Hera in the Beast Den, he used the last of his Geo to buy the distant village stag and return to Dirtmouth. From here, he entered the Black Egg Temple and finished the run.
Sorry.
And Spleen finished out this run with a time of 1 hour and 19 seconds.
Pretty good, pretty good. Faster than me.
First and final hour
I think it took
to ever be crossed.
Like what? Is it 40 hours or something? First run though.
This large
so the thing is, like, if I were to try again, if I were to actually try to go for anything in terms of any speedrunning. No, I'm not. No.
route would become
bad
the
flaws, bad.
For the aptly called Dive Master route, which would be the framework for all early runs of Hollow Knight.
Turn it up
Spleen
just a
would
smidgen
not
more.
be the first
To be safe, so you guys are not gonna complain about
it. They were beaten to
it
it by another player, Orolen, who had been running parallel to Spleen.
A new
Only 6 days
contestant
after
arrives.
Spleen's run of 1 hour and 19, Oro beat Spleen's run by about a minute,
Okay.
finishing his own time of 59 minutes and 13 seconds.
Pretty damn good.
Being
Pretty
a
damn
crafty
good.
and attentive player, he had also made a few smart changes to the dive route. After Dreamnail, he entered the city from the right side instead of returning through storerooms, allowing him to bench at the Watcher's Spire as an anchor point for the Lem and Waterways trips,
And
skipping
nail
the awkward
upgrade.
climb out of Isma's Grove by the means of a quit out.
See,
This
that
also-
fucking blows about video making. He just realized later on that, fuck, it's actually, yeah. I mean, you know, a little subtitle is good, but you know, realizing it later on, I really realized that last night when I was making a short. It is called Hello-Nest Voice Contest. Feel free to watch it. It's kind of, it's there. I'm not gonna spoil anything.
Also meant that by the time Oro had finished the Watcher's fight, he had routed enough Geo to make a beeline for King's Station immediately. Oro would beat his own run the very next day.
Okay.
With some more polished movement,
With how
and less
much?
mistakes, he finished out a run of 58 minutes and 29 seconds.
They never got dive later on, right? I mean, they only got it here to get, I guess maybe some iframes. I don't know if maybe they're using that, but I saw him use it for damage here. But they used it to get Dong Defender.
A
Faster.
44-second improvement.
Ooh.
The consistent practice he was getting from streaming his speedrun attempts was doing wonders for improving Oro's traversal abilities, leading to less hiccups and stumbles in the run. So, unsurprisingly, he soon ended up beating his time once again, now gaining another respectable 53 seconds on his world record from the previous day. Small
Yeah, he
microadjustments
knows.
to movement, such as introducing inventory drops and C-dashes for more of the long vertical and horizontal stretches, as well as generally cleaner movement for the boss fights, ended up netting.
Do you guys think they use Wayward Compass? Is that so? Okay.
Him a 57.36. This ended up being a very fruitful week for Oro, with 4 world records in 4 days of attempts. But Oro wasn't the only one making strides. As more and more runners were joining the community and starting to experiment with different routes and strategies,
Hell yeah.
it really was no surprise that a few major discoveries were due to occur within long. Only another 4 days after Oro's latest record, a speedrunner by the name of Moglar 5K would make a massive discovery.
Okay.
And do keep
Moglar.
his name in mind, because this runner would prove to be incredibly important for the speedrun
Moglar
circuit
5K.
development.
Remember it, okay?
Moglar 5K, nicknamed Mag, was a top speedrunner
Oh.
in other games such as
Mag.
Undertale and Environmental Station Alpha at just
That
the
looks
age
so
of
hard.
13. He had found a particular
Undertale?
passion for finding obscure skips in the caves of Hollow
I think about it, he probably said it. Before I asked.
Nest, and his first major contribution would result in a fundamental change in the routing of the speedrun. On the 27th of March, Mag shared a video of a new type of skip that he'd found, the acid skip.
Ooh.
By grabbing the wall right above the acid in the Crossroads Fog Canyon
That is
entrance,
so
the knight was
clean
barely
and
able
so hard
charge
to
a
pull
crystal
off.
dash, which would allow them to just squeeze under the ceiling and make it into the area without requiring Isma's tier.
That is
This was a
insane.
massive discovery.
Yep.
Considering how
Mag.
big of a detour runners
Gold.
would take to collect the
The
item
gold.
for the sole purpose of reaching the teacher's archives. Speedrunners could now cut the entire Dung Defender and Isthmus Grove segments from the run,
I knew
and
it!
therefore waterways as a whole, as those
I don't
two
even
were the
remember
sole
where
reasons they
Isthmus
went there
is.
as well. So, the Crossroads Acid Skip had potential to shave minutes off the run.
Yeah.
Oro was quick to introduce this huge discovery into his runs. The very next day, he set out to break his record with the new skip. The early game looked the same, but Oro already saved a few seconds from no longer needing to collect the simple key in the storerooms. After Crystal Peak and Dreamnail, he entered the City of Tears from the right. Oro now anchored in Spire and then went to sell to Lem. With the relics he had grabbed from Soulmaster and in Crystal Peak, this was enough to get him to 1800 Geo, enough for the Lantern. Now, instead of even going to Waterways at all, he quit back out to Spire and saved multiple minutes. The Watcher Knight's chest afforded him the remaining Geo he would need for the King's Station and Distant Village Stag Station. After buying the Lantern, he traversed through Crossroads and performed the new skip at the canyon entrance.
And people
Yo,
are probably
let's
like
fucking go.
parking in the
runners
chat.
were collecting Descending Dark in their route. That, along with Shaman Stone and some practice, allowed Oro to kill Umu in their second
He
cycle,
almost died to
saving tons
Umu.
of time. Umu and its mechanics will become more relevant later, so keep that in the back of your mind for now. After pushing into Deep Nest and collecting Hera, Uro looped back to the Black Egg Temple to finish out the run. And the results? A 4-minute and 7-second improvement from the previous route. This was the second of 2 world records that Oro achieved in that day, with the first one being at 55:20.
Okay.
A week later, Oro would beat his own world record again, by a nice 1 minute and 47 seconds.
Holy fucking god.
This was the first record since Spleen's second run where the route stayed the exact same as before. Oro instead gained large amounts of time save with a much stronger late game, where the Umu fight and the final boss in particular saved a lot of time. Oro was nearing the 50-minute barrier, but just like Spleen before him, he wouldn't be the one to break it. Because once again, things were brewing in the skip-finding department. A runner by the name of Kain Zantezuken had made a discovery so influential that it would become the basis for almost all Hollow Knight speedrun categories to come. This was the Blue Lake Shade Skip. When you die in Hollow Knight, the player leaves behind a shade, a remnant of their past life. If the player returns to their location of death and kills the shade, they can regain their lost Geo and mend their broken soul container. More relevant for us, however, is the shade's movement. The shade is a floating enemy that seeks the player, and Kain discovered that you could die at this spot next to Salubra's hut and then lure the shade close and high enough to the Blue Lake exit that it was possible to wall jump, dash, and pogo the shade for enough height to reach the shortcut to the Blue Lake without access to the Crystal Dash or Wings abilities.
God damn.
If the player also killed the shade in the process, they could regain their Geo, allowing for viable Geo routing with the skip. Kain quickly realized that this was a large enough discovery that the dive route could become entirely obsolete. So, the very next day after the discovery, they set out on a run with a completely new route. And
April
immediately
13th,
displayed its incredible
2017.
potential, shattering the world record
That's
by
not even 2 months after release. It released on 24th of February, right?
a
Oh my
whopping
god.
minute 43, and barely crossing the 50-minute barrier by just
Sheesh.
1 second. Sadly, there is no recorded footage of this run, but luckily for us, another runner would make their world record debut only hours later. Namely, a speedrunner by the name of Monsteller had also taken interest in Kain's discovery, and his run became the first recorded debut of what we'll call the almost bare bones route. A significantly harder, much faster...
It's funny watching this now, because I'm pretty sure this video came out like a week before Leb's run, so he can already update this video for that. I'm pretty sure, I was told that.
Faster route, and a precursor to the modern speedrun route you may be familiar with. The beginning of the run already had a huge difference. Instead of fully fighting the False Knight, Monsteller opted to use this shortcut that unlocked after the boss's first tantrum, as he wasn't gonna need the city crest at all. This was already saving him about 50 seconds, with a slight setback of missing the 200 Geo from the chest.
So you'll need
Once
to find
again,
that somewhere
things changed
else.
After he collected the Mantis Claw. Monster opted to quit back to Ancestral Mound and dashed across Crossroads to reach Salubra and Sly. Monster benched at Salubra, and after purchasing Shaman Stone and rescuing Sly, he let this husk pummel him to death. Upon his respawn at the bench, Monster lured the newly spawned Shade up and to the right, and pogoed it to reach the Blue Lake early. This let him collect the Dream Nail and resting grounds really early into the run. This would allow him to skip going to city multiple times, as he could already get Lurien on his first pass. Here, he needed to gather a lot of geo quickly, as he would need about—
I'm gonna ask something crazy here. Maybe some of you guys can tell me this, but these speedrunners would be insane at Guardhome, right? I mean, obviously this is way before Guardhome was even a thing, but wouldn't they be insane at Guardhome? Or is, you know, like, I mean, Absolute Radiance is something else, huh? Absolute rigged! That's what I'm saying!
About 2200 for the Lantern as well as the King's Station and Distant Village stags. Monster's solution was relics. He performed a pogo on this lantern to reach this spiked roof, which was hiding a Hallownest teal, as well as dispatching the Gorgeous Husk for 420 geo.
Gorgeous
Now,
Husk!
he performed the same anchor at the spire as before, and then headed leftward. After ascending the rafters and losing a few seconds to these Husk guards, he gathered the seal on top of the rafters and went to sell to
Ooh,
left.
sick
With
parry!
his newfound
Sick
riches,
parry.
He upgraded his nail once and then quit back out to spire. Now came a pretty meaningful difference. Remember how I called this a bare bones route? Well, the Shade Skip had completely circumvented the entire ordeal required to get Descending Dark or even Desolate Dive. And while that saved multiple minutes, it meant the easy boss fights were a thing of the past. The knight was now equipped with a nail upgrade, fireball, and shaman stone alone. And this meant that boss fights would be much harder and much longer. And it was time to fight the Watcher Knights. Due to the fight's newfound difficulty, Monster played it extremely safe, losing him much of the potential time save of the route. But at this point, his goal was to simply finish a run with the route, and this could always be amended with practice in future runs. After Lurien, he grabbed the chest and climbed back down to King's Station to travel to Dirtmouth. He had now gathered all the geo he would need for the rest of the run.
Dirtmouth. Dirtmouth? It's Dirtmouth, right?
And could therefore purchase the lantern in order to have a path into Crystal Peak. On that note, the ditching of Dive meant players now needed Lantern in order to get Crystal Heart, by entering through this dark room instead. While these runners were easily able to navigate these rooms in pitch black darkness, the toll to open the door would only be interactable with the lantern in hand.
Oh.
Anyway, upon collecting Crystal Heart, he quit back out to Dirt.
So that's why the lantern is so fucking good to get.
The rest of the run identically to the older route, albeit with much harder boss
See,
fights.
I basically know nothing. Honestly, I just played the game, made a playthrough. Also, go watch it if you're new here. So I've gotten some Absolute Radiance practice in. You can see that in the bot too. So now, it feels good that I can just practice on the last boss. And when I've practiced enough on him, I haven't practiced since, but when I have practiced enough on him or her, it's Radiance or her, would make sense. Then I am gonna go in and just slam, because I feel like I will be unstoppable then. Because Absolute Radiance is definitely the hardest boss I have fought. It's not the best boss, but it's the hardest, I would say. Really, it's really cool. The music is good. Why am I saying? We are not here for Absolute Radiance. I need to shut up, sorry.
And despite playing very safe with very slow bosses, Monster displayed the potential of this new route while simultaneously beating Kain Zantazuken's run from hours earlier by another minute and 14 seconds, with a time of 48:45. Kain would return and beat Monster's time 2 days later, getting a 47:37, a record which Monster would take back 2 days after that, landing a 47:23. The time save in these runs mainly came from the two runners getting more familiar with the new route's harder boss fights. So, it was clear. The dive route was out, and the name of the game was Hollow Knight. I mean, getting extremely good at extremely difficult boss fights. But yeah.
Boy Hard Edition.
And after taking a few days to learn the new route, the other runners were up to speed with the category. And the previous reigning champion of the category, Oro, was back to running. On the 27th of March, he took the record back, beating Monster's time
April.
by 13 seconds.
Oh, I left
This was
that.
Oro's final world record in Hollow Knight.
Like, that is also with me, if I'm saying something wrong, and I'm like, should I just put a subtitle, or should I do another narration? Like...
He would soon leave to speedrun other games. and he had left quite a mark on the game's early history, with 7 world records to his name and the game's first GDQ appearance. But as Oro left, there was...
Does it actually count as 7 world records? I mean, I guess it does. But, you know, it's just an improvement on his own time.
a new runner who joined the community.
It's cool.
No one knew it
it's
at
cool.
the time, but he would go on to become the most impactful figure in the speedrunning scene, and later Hollow Knight as a whole. On the day after Uro's recent record, he posted a question about his spells being weirdly delayed. He was quickly informed by runner and modder Serena that there was a quick cast button that he should be using. And hours later, he returned with a screenshot of his timer, showing he had just beaten the world record by 43 seconds.
Oh.
This was Fireborn. Fireborn had a really methodical approach to speedrunning.
If you get a fucking title card, you know you're the shit. Let's just see that again. Just see that again.
Was Fireborn.
No.
He returned with a screenshot of his timer, showing he had just beaten the world record by 43 seconds. This was Fireborn.
Badass. I like that.
Fireborn had a really methodical approach to speedrunning that put him way ahead of his time. While others would grind runs, Fire enjoyed the feeling of patiently practicing each segment to become really consistent at it.
Okay.
This resulted in lots of polished, precise gameplay and some incredibly rapid improvement. After Fire's world record debut, 90% quickly became a friendly three-way rivalry between Mag, Monsta, and himself, where they would all encourage and motivate each other to push their times down. And during the month of June, all three of them would start practicing using copied save files to improve their segments. And as they practiced, they started to whittle down their times. Monsta started off the month strong, and in his run attempts, he showed off some changes to the routing. Firstly, runners now got Crossroads Stag after Claw instead of before False Night, in order to skip the slow gathering of Geo in Crossroads. More consistent setups for other strats such as the Mantis Pogo were also found. In City of Tears, Monsta took the top path to leftmost city after the Spire Bench instead of going through the fountain, as it resulted in a much shorter detour. He was still playing safe on the boss fights as they were extremely difficult, but you could tell he was getting more comfortable with the fight by the day. A lot of time save came from simple room movement improvements though, and this resulted in new world records for Monsta on June 3rd and June 6th. First a 46.19 and then a 45.25. After congratulating Monsta on his time, Fire got right back to work on bopping him. And bop him he did. Increased confidence in Fire's boss fights in late game allowed him to get an impressive 44.17, over 1 minute of improvement on the world record. At this point, as the record started getting more optimized, world records started standing for longer periods of time, despite the active competition. So, Fire's new record stood until the end of the month, when Monsta set out to improve his time again. He started a new save file, and about 50 minutes later, returned with a time of 44 minutes, 17 seconds, and 130 milliseconds.
That was so dramatic.
He had tied Fire's run to the second. But it was just slightly faster. So, there was a new world record by 0.07 of a second. But, hold on. Didn't I say this was a three-way race? Well, Moglar 5K had been busy as well. Over the past few weeks, he had been finding multiple new skips of the most difficult and unconventional variety, most of which would later find their place in the game's future randomizer mod's most difficult setups.
Wait. You can hit on thorns too? I thought you couldn't. Look. Here. Is he not hitting the thorns?
The game's future randomizer.
He is.
Randomizer mod's most difficult settings, fittingly called Mag skips. Mag had already made one route-changing discovery, and on May 30th, he would show off his second one. This was the Explosion Pogo. While messing around in fungal wastes, he had realized...
Dude, this is too funny. Like, speedrunners are determined, tenacious, and they really just want to get it done. So fucking impressive, but holy fuck, you gotta be hyper fixated on the game. Really impressive. I don't think I would be able to be that fixated on, you know, anything other than editing, honestly. So this is this is cool. This is cool.
Is that the Sporg's spore projectile, which would naturally explode upon being hit, would remain intact when it begins its natural explosion animation upon burning its fuse. And more importantly, both the explosion as well as the Sporg's projectile itself had a pogoable hitbox.
Really? Wait, there's so many things you can pogo that I didn't even know! I mean, I saw this in Leb's run as well, but I didn't know that it was, you know, the projectile and the explosion. That's insane.
This Sporg's projectile down here, time a pogo on the spore and then on the explosion itself to get barely enough height.
I didn't notice it during Leb's run.
Right here. This would save going all the way around the Mantis village for Claw, and it was about a 25 to 30 second time save. If you want to learn more about Moglar's other groundbreaking skip discoveries, check out this excellent video by Fireborn. And speaking of Fireborn, he was quick to implement...
is that a React video? For us?
If you want to learn more about Moglar's other groundbreaking skip discoveries, check out this excellent video.
You know, this is like really cool. You know, a speedrunner making a video on another speedrunner. You know, one in the freeway rivalry. Pretty cool. Could maybe, I might even watch that for, at some point, you know, a little React video there.
By
then I would know who Fireborn is. I've heard the name before, but I'm not sure. I knew he was a speedrunner, and I think I saw one shot with him where he was a grub, and every time he jumped, he spawned even more grubs, and he was a PNG tuber with a scrub file, I think. Yeah. I'm not gonna find it for you guys. You guys can find it yourself, or maybe you guys even know what I'm talking about.
Fireborn. And speaking of Fireborn, he was quick to implement Moglar's discovery, along with another major find. This was the Fireball skip. By using the Fireball's knockback and air stall to their advantage, players had discovered you could extend your jump distance enough to reach certain ledges with a perfectly timed turnaround into Fireball cast.
That's
this
insane.
was a much faster alternative to the Squid Pogo performed by Spleen all the way back in the first run, as well as the Green Path entrance itself and this room here. The latter two would only see implementation later as the month passed though, as the trick was quite finicky and hard to get right. Armed with these new strategies, Fireborn performed this run. After matching his early game, 20 seconds came from a great execution of the explosion pogo. 10 minutes later, Fire again showed his prowess in quickly developing confidence with boss fights, getting a blisteringly fast Watcher Knight fight, and beating his own split by a whopping 9 seconds.
That is also so
Late
important.
game wasn't quite as strong though, with a stumble on Umu due to almost dying, and a slightly fumbled Hera the Beast split. But Fire finished out strong, tying his best segment and saving 26 seconds.
Okay.
The timer stopped and a new world record had arrived. 43:27. About 50 seconds faster. Moglar wasn't just interested in finding strats for other players to use. He wanted to improve his PB as well. And upon setting out on runs, he showed that despite being half as old as the other runners, he could keep the same pace. In fact, he could do it faster. Much faster.
Oh?
Soon, he showed just that, shattering the world record with a 42:18.
Moglar.
The time save here came largely from the boss fights. While most other runners were still utilizing this pogo wiggle strategy on Watcher Knights in the Hollow Knight, for the sake of getting them to turn around repeatedly and not be able to attack as frequently, Mag realized this was rather slow, so he started implementing the early versions of the modern damage rotations for these bosses. And unsurprisingly, the time save came rolling in. After Mag's recent world record, the community was crawling closer and closer to another and perhaps the last 10-minute barrier in the speedrun. And breaking it wouldn't take long at all, because just 2 days later, Moglar got a 39:34. Now hold on, where did all that time save come from? Well, allow me to explain. In the very beginning, I mentioned that Spleen's first run happened on the same day as the loadless timer was introduced. This loadless timer is how runners made sure that differences in computer hardware speed didn't affect the fairness of competition. On the day before Moglar's 39, a large update was made to the load timer mover that started pausing the timer for more load-dependent segments that were previously...
Dude, he had a fucking monkey picture. Look at it.
to the load time remover that started
That's
pausing
good.
the timer for more load-dependent segments that were previously unpaused. This included little
Mag
things
is the
like
goat.
the loads in between main menu screens and the start of the game, as well as more significant ones, like the second unskippable Dreamer cutscene. This resulted
Okay.
in about a 2-minute time save for all runs going forward, and a fairer run for all players.
Sheesh.
Even
That's
accounting
nice.
for that time save though, Moglar's run was an improvement.
It
to
has
the
been
previous
lost to
one.
time, bro.
Only hours after that,
How?
Monster would get a run of his own with the new timer, beating out Moglar's time by 24 seconds. A good portion of that time saved.
But wouldn't
came
Mag
from Umu.
just...
Up until now, Umu had been a largely improvised boss, but as players spent time with the bare-bones route, it became clear they needed to learn more about the fight, as its cycle-based nature meant that doing the fight with one less cycle would result in between 15 and 20 seconds of time save. So, over hours and hours of labbing strats, here's what they found. Firstly, dream-nailing Umu for soul between cycles became really important, as he wanted to be able to get as much damage in as possible when the fight opened.
Yeah.
More importantly, it was discovered that it was possible to use the large bottom platform of the arena to get Umu stuck when it entered a vulnerable state, allowing runners to deal blows repeatedly without the boss floating away. As familiarity with the bare-bones route
Okay.
set in, runners realized that it was possible to hit enemies twice with a single cast of Vengeful Spirit, as sometimes the knockback the enemy took or the enemy's hitbox was large enough that the Vengeful Spirit was still overlapping with it when the first hit's iframes ran out. Put together, these discoveries and hours of labbing resulted in Monster's discovery of a 2-cycle Umu, where it was just possible to deplete the boss's
See, they still are not wearing Fury of the Fallen charm. And I know that's gonna happen at some point, and they're gonna one-cycle this.
250
Wait. Did they just one-cycle? Well, fuck. Okay.
HP
Well, they
into
will kill it faster, at least. Kill everything faster.
damage cycles with Shaman Stone and a nail upgrade. Up to this point, most runners had taken up to 4 cycles in their Umu fights, so this was a pretty
Oh.
significant time save
4 cycles.
of about 20 to 40 seconds. But Umu came with another challenge. Importantly, and most annoyingly, the fight was terribly inconsistent, and
Yep.
completely up to RNG.
Yep.
Usually, the boss did 3 attacks in its first cycle, and 2 attacks per cycle after that. But for some reason, there was about a 25% chance that the boss would do an extra attack before opening up. After Umu attacks, it moves.
The thing is, like in P5, I feel like there's a little bug where you can force it to spawn the jellyfish. What I usually do, I started doing preparing Crystal Heart Dash at the bottom left to when it starts moving, and then I don't know, because it should just do 2 attack patterns, and then it should actually then it should spawn them. But sometimes when I do it, it just spawns them immediately. I don't know if it's just luck. It might just be luck, but I feel like it's happened way too often for it to only be luck. It's only because I want to, I don't know, dash a good amount. I don't know, I just did it, okay? Don't ask.
So, an extra attack would complicate any setups for the fight by moving the boss out of place. And of course, backups were quickly found for this, but the main issue was time. The way Umu works is that each attack could either be the lightning chase, the so-called slow attack that takes 8 seconds, or the barrage, the fast attack that only takes 3.
Yeah, okay.
And the boss can only do 2 attacks of the same kind in a row. So even with a 2-cycle, this means the time of the fight is essentially a dice roll. And the odds of
That
getting
sucks.
the best possible pattern, a fast, fast, slow, fast, fast, is only about 3.9%. On the other side of things, if you get the worst possible pattern, a slow, slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, slow, you would lose almost 30 seconds.
That's
So,
a
if
lot.
you're wondering why everyone hates Umu, then this is why.
No, I
The
just
next
hate
7
Umu.
years of world
Okay?
record grinding would mean countless paces lost.
Or
to
at
this
least
dice
Miss
roll,
Squirrel,
2/3
okay?
into the run.
We all miss Squirrel.
Anyway, going back into the timeline, Moglar would beat Mons this time again by 8 seconds a few days later. And soon after that, Fire would join in on the fun as well, getting a 38:44 and claiming the record back for himself. All 3 of them were on their A game, with a barrage of records coming in just more than a week. But let's dial back the clock about a month or so and shift our focus to late game. Because another big route change was brewing, one that would, of course, make the run even harder. After Moglar had found the Crossroads acid skip in the early months, plenty of other acid pits immediately came into the minds of curious runners.
Yeah.
One of these runners was Kine, and one of these acid pits was this one. The Queen's Gardens acid entrance, nicknamed QGA. This acid pit had two central challenges. Firstly, the wall next to the acid didn't extend nearly as far as the Crossroads one, raising the question about whether it was even possible to wallcling there in the first place. One more issue though, even if it were possible to C-dash under this thorny overhang, you still had to jump out on the other side.
Yeah.
If you C-dash too low, you would dunk in the acid instantly without the escape even being possible. Upon testing though, Kine found that there was about 2 pixels of room to grab onto the wall and C-dash across. The tricky part is that C-dash, unlike the jump or nail, had no buffer frames. That meant that you had to press C-dash after you touched the wall, or you would slide into acid. But why go through all this? Well, getting to Distant Village through Deep Nest was a really long and slow detour. If we instead entered through Queen's Gardens, we made a much more direct path towards our goal, saving about 40 seconds. This wasn't easy to do though, because even aside from QGA easily being the hardest trick in the run, maneuvering Queen's Gardens was incredibly difficult to do quickly. The enemies were much more dangerous and had projectiles, but the main issue was ultimately health, partially due to this nifty hazard respawn players had found, where you could jump into the thorns on this specific spot, barely entering a new hazard respawn zone that plopped you next to the lever, preventing the slow runaround. This wasn't hard to do at all, but it lost you 1 health, a loss you would have to carry all the way through the Beast's Den, an area that was now very difficult since the bare bones route was implemented, because you couldn't use D-Dark on the Devouts anymore. So, with that context in mind, let's go back to where we were. The proposed QG route was so difficult that all 3 top runners put off implementing it for a month, until they felt that they were struggling to squeeze out time save elsewhere. But after Fires 3844, Moglar, who was way more comfortable with crazy skips than the other two, decided to use time. On a slightly behind run, he managed to recover some time by nailing the new Umu 2 cycle, putting him tied with PB. Then he debuted the new route. He made QGA on his second try and raced into the Queen's Gardens. With a textbook
he actually stops it.
and
That's
first try
good.
hazard dunk, Moglar dropped through the rest of the area, maneuvered this long corridor, and entered Deep Nest. And did you know there used to be a toll here on the older patches? Now you do. It looks so weird. Anyway, despite a careful late game with a few healing stops, Moglar saved 20 seconds, which he carried to the end. The new world record was the 38:37, and the Queen's Gardens route was the new meta.
Okay.
This run would also be Moglar's final stint as a world record holder, and wow, what a legacy he had left behind.
Really?
At only
He just
14
stopped?
years of age, he had achieved 4 world records and paved the way for various game-changing discoveries. and route
14?
changes. When I started speedrunning Hollow Knight at age 13 in 2020, Mag was a figure of inspiration, showing me that it was possible to be good.
When I was 13 in 2020, does those people exist?
2020 and route changes.
Wait.
When I started speedrunning Hollow Knight at age 13 in 2020, Mag was a figure of
Okay, yeah.
inspiration, showing me that it was possible to be good even at a young age. He would return to the grind once or twice in the next year, and would continue to contribute amazing skip finds, most famously the eponymous Mag-Isma skip in 2018, that almost revolutionized the entire category. And then Moglar would go on to dominate the Celeste speedrun leaderboard in 2018, but that's a different story. At around the same time, Monsta, who had always been more interested in longer categories, went off to run 100% and True Ending. And there remained one undisputed champion of any percent. And he wasn't gonna stop anytime soon. As June ended and July began, Fireborn caught up to Moglar's implementation of the Queen's Gardens route. And upon starting to do attempts, he got this run. Throughout the first half of the run, he was behind, but with a textbook Umu 2 cycle, he was back ahead of his PB. And impressively, Fireborn performed the incredibly difficult QGA on his first try. He had a small hiccup in the Mantis Petra arena that forced him to heal after the hazard warp, and he had another slight slip up in Deep Nest, forcing him to clutch the entire—
See, it's always good to know when you're speedrunning that you can always improve in that way. That's good to know, especially if it beats the record now.
on 1 HP. like Mag, he ended up leaving with only about 20 of the 40 possible seconds of time save. An ongoing project that future runs would amend. Still, Fire finished out the run with a strong Hollow Knight fight and ended with a time of 38:17. Pretty impressive for a
Holy
first
shit.
run with a new route. And he was only getting started.
Of course he was.
Fire was completely uncontested would be doing another runner by the name of Trinomi a disservice. As the months passed from the game's release, more and more people would try their hand at speedrunning the game. Trinomi was one of them. While joining after the other runners, he started grinding his own runs and rapidly improved. By the end of July, he had all but caught up to Fire even, and as Monsta and Mag had left the category, Trinomi and Fire became the two top runners continuing to push the category further. And Trinomi wasn't just a good runner, but he had some great ideas as well. Right off the bat, he started finding small time saves everywhere. However, his first large contribution came when he set his sights on a much larger and much more difficult idea. Ever since the start, runners had collected this nail upgrade to aid in boss fights. Trinomi wanted to skip it.
Oh
the idea
shit.
being that by eliminating the nail upgrade, this entire long trek, as well as 200 geo, could all be eliminated from the route, saving enormous amounts of time.
There's
Of
also a
course,
lot
the run
of
would
big
now
damage
be even
loss.
harder than before, and you would lose some time to slower boss fights and devouts, but Trinomi figured the idea had potential, so he set out on a run with it. And with minimal practice with the harder fights and some mistakes, Trinomi still returned to the speedrun Discord with a PB in hand, telling Fire it had potential. Despite a 3-cycle Umu, and despite the slower fights, it looked like a new route was crystallizing.
Okay.
Thanks to Trinomi, the true bare-bones route was born. And speaking of
Okay.
things being born, Fireborn decided to test a run without the nail upgrade the following day. And just like Trinomi, he PB'd as well, getting a new world record of 38 minutes. Now that the two runners had established the route was viable, they got to work on learning how to make it through the run without dying. Because now, suddenly, that was quite a tall order.
Yeah.
As Fireborn gained familiarity and
I could
confidence with
imagine.
the new route, he kept getting more and more paces to late game. And knowing him, the results were unsurprising.
Lost
Another
the time.
half a minute was quickly cut from the record. Trinomi got busy with his new routing as well. He had spent some time working on learning the harder fights, and had even figured out a way to 2-cycle Umu on Nail 0. As Umu had
Really?
250 health, the players needed to deal 5 Nail hits and 5 Shaman Stone Fireball hits per cycle to succeed. This was quite doable with Trinomi's setup, as one of the ending fireballs would double hit the boss. With this up his
Oh.
sleeve, he set out to do his own grinding with the route, and
That
came
is
back with
insane.
an impressive 10-second shave off the world record Fire had set. And after that, the category lay dormant for the first time ever, as Fire and Trinomi both took well-deserved breaks from grinding runs. During this time, two major things happened. The first was the decision to formally title the category No Major Glitches. Until now, there had been common discussions in the community about which tricks should be allowed, where some were more adamant about sticking to a completely glitchless run. In the end, it was agreed upon by a majority that No Major Glitches was a great compromise. This allowed some small glitches and tricks such as the inventory drop, the recently found gate walkling storage, and early
Oh
control,
yeah.
while still keeping the run feeling very vanilla and grounded, focusing much more on execution within the game's established rules rather than breaking them entirely. The second and more important thing was two brand new updates. The game's first major content update, Hidden Dreams, released on August 10th and introduced new bosses, the Dreamgate ability, a stag station, and loads of changes. These changes were largely inconsequential.
Great Prince Zone.
However, Umu's health was raised from 250 to 300, making the 2-cycle with no nail upgrade impossible. This patch would still be faster though due to a find by Trinomi, who immediately started messing around with the newly added translations to the game. Considering how common it was in other games for a specific language to be vastly speedier, Trinomi started
German.
testing.
在统计了每种语言的对话跳过速度后，他的结论是使用中文可以让你节省20秒的时间，因为它的语法
Simplified
结构
Chinese
让一个英文单词只需要1到2个文字就能表达清楚，这大大减少了和斯莱、里姆、守门员对话时需要跳过的文本量。
Anyway, the second update, released on Halloween, brought an even bigger find. The content, of course, was incredible, but the any percent
There
runners
he
had
is.
eyes for one thing and one thing only. Namely, Team Cherry had done something to the game's levers. On patch 1.2.2.1 only, it became possible to slash lever hitboxes through walls. This meant that you could potentially open locked doors from the wrong side, opening up the possibility to sequence break certain areas in the game. And lo and behold, soon after the update's release, one such skip was found in the any % route. It was found that you could upslash this lever here in Watcher Spire through the floor, skipping the need to perform this entire gauntlet and kill this great Husk sentry, and saving significant time.
These guys are nuts.
One interesting consequence of this was the need
because the thing is, we only hear about like 3, 4, 5 people, but there's probably thousands trying to compete. It's insane.
Perform the end of this room in pitch black darkness, as the lighting trigger at the bottom entrance was now never crossed. This was relatively easy though, as it was just a short snippet. Because of this discovery, patch 1.2.2.1 would become the de facto speedrun patch for the game. And as the next patch would fix the lever skips, as well as many other speedrun glitches such as the imagery drop, all runs of any % were performed on 1.2.
JK, we love you, Jack Vine. Also, Team Cherry added 1.2.2.1 to Steam betas to make speedrunning more accessible. That's so awesome of them. Wait, okay. Yo, Team Cherry, if you guys need a voice actor, bare for nada, you know, just hit your boy up. I don't expect you guys to be watching, but you know, it will be cool.
2.1 from here onwards. These patches would pique the curiosity of the dormant top runners. Fire would return first after Hidden Dreams came out, getting an impressive 52-second world record on the new patch. He saved some time from the language change, but lost some to now needing a 3-cycle Umu. Despite this, Fire had simply improved so much at the barebones route that he shaved significant time off the boss fights and late game. The resulting final time was a 36:29. But the release of 1.2.2.1 would prove even more interesting, and with it came some updates to the routing. As runners could now skip the Spire Gauntlet, they no longer got the Sentry's Geo. This prompted a Geo reroute. Let's look at this run Fire performed in early December. Firstly, as he had implemented this Fireball skip in Green Path, it became quick to grab these 50 Geo from the so-called Boomer Rocks in early game. He needed these because the Moss Knight's Geo drops had been changed from 80 to 35. He would supplement this Geo by getting these rocks in Fungal as well, the so-called Boomer Rocks route. This gave him barely enough to afford the Crossroads tag, after which the Gruzmother Geo gave him just enough for Shaman Stone. Once in city, Fire headed right into King Station, pogoed this lantern to reach the wall, and traversed the spiked roof for this seal. Gorgeous Husk and Co. gave another 500, and the last seal he got from the rafters, in which he cleverly lured this Husk guard for a shortcut up. The resulting 20 seconds of time saved despite the new route and confidence proved its potential. After a slightly weaker late game though, he ended up tied with PB out of Beastden. Fire had learned a thing or two about the final fight from Moglar and Trinomi however, and ended up goaling the fight. That is, beating his own best ever fight by 7 seconds. The resulting world record was a time of 36:22.
Okay.
After a short holiday break, 2018 began, and Fireborn got right back into trimming down the world record.
Of course he did.
He had made another small improvement to the route. Up until now, runners had all grabbed Soulcatcher and Mound, and equipped it for the first half of the run until they got Shaman Stone. And while it made the soul gathering for the Green Path Fireball skips and the Hornet fights easier, it hardly saved any time.
Oh,
In fact, picking it up was a huge time loss, as this meant you had to sit down on this bench and equip it.
Yeah,
You
okay.
would think you have to sit down here anyway, as you had to bench anchor for after Mothwing Cloak, but it turns out the game would hard save you here as soon as you left Mound regardless. So Fire skipped out on Soulcatcher, and with a little bit more attentive soul gathering in Green Path, he netted a few seconds of time save. A frankly overdue change. And he kept saving time throughout mid-game, with a great city, Watchers, and Crystal Peak.
Jeez.
The winning streak continued through Umu, as he nailed the QG route and Hera with no stumbles. So upon entering the Hollow Knight arena, Fire was 38 seconds ahead. He was set to obliterate the 36-minute barrier.
Okay.
On that note, let's finally properly talk about the Hollow Knight. At this point, runners had started to implement some really aggressive strats here, mainly pioneered by Trinomi and Moglar. Most tricky were these double fireballs on the dashes, where runners would quickly need to react with a short jump, turn around and fireball along the boss's lunge, hitting it twice for a nice 40 damage.
Okay.
And while not as bad as Umu, THK and Watcher Knights were not exempt for having inconsistent RNG, as not all attacks were created equal. THK in particular has this parry move, which makes them completely invulnerable. If they do a lot of parries, you're essentially forced to wait for them and lose a lot of time. And with that in mind, it became easy to choke under the pressure. This 38-second pace became the first ever world record in this story to fall prey to a fumble at the end. And sadly, it wouldn't be the last either. But despite the fumble, Fire made an admirable attempt to salvage a bad situation, still closing out with a 36:04, an 18-second world record. Unfortunately, the sub-36 was gonna have to wait until another day. Another day came only 4 days later, when Fire started up his stream to do some more attempts. And this one got off to a pretty good start. With an insane bunched up Watcher Knight's pattern played really well, netting him a huge time save. He lost some time in late game, but entered THK on roughly the same pace as before. And he wasn't gonna make the same mistake twice. As the ending cutscene started rolling, Fireborn's timer stopped at a 35:47.
16
a 17-second improvement.
No,
upon
what? 17 seconds?
time.
What?
Fire was, well, for the lack of a better term, on fire. And he wasn't done yet, because immediately after the credits had scrolled, he decided to start another run.
Of course, it's like only 36 minutes of his time, right?
With a slightly behind first half, he managed to catch up by Watcher Knights again, keeping the same pace all the way through Umu. And then, suddenly, he decided to lock the fuck in. He first tried
swore!
and then after that, soared through Queen's Gardens without hesitating. Deep Nest got the same treatment. Well, for the most part. In Beasten, Fire showed off a brand new strategy on the Devouts. He would fireball 3 times, wait until the enemy opened its mask, hit twice, and then dash into the Devout for a damage tank. You see,
so you don't get hit for 2 damage.
But if you get hit by contact damage, you only take 1.
Exactly.
After the damage tank, he would use his remaining invincibility frames to do 2 more hits in a fireball, just barely killing the Devout before it closed again. This was a very fast but risky approach to the Devouts, as you would have to navigate the rest of the den with even less health. And remember, runners were already a health short because of this hazard dunk in Queen's Gardens. In this particular run though, it paid off, because Fire got a massive gold at Hera. And then he kept the same blistering pace through the final boss as well, with a confident final
He's so
display
fucking
of
good,
skill.
holy shit.
The boss died, the timer stopped, and for the second time in a row, Fire had shattered his own world record.
Holy
What a guy.
fuck.
And while Fire was grinding down the times, other runners were making discoveries in the labbing department. A newer runner, Scurry, had recently joined the community and was improving rapidly. With the relatively recent lever skip find in mind, they started thinking about the city geo route and proposed a big change to it. How about, they thought, we do Watcher Knights before the Relic Cell? If runners opened this shortcut, then fought Watcher Knights before Lem, they could also skip the Spire bench entirely. Now, they could instead take a detour to Lem on the way out of the area. The Rafter Seal could then easily be replaced with this much faster run by the Watcher's Chest. And while reaching Lem after picking up a Dreamer would require running out to talk to him by the fountain, Scurry figured this would all be a net time save. And they were absolutely correct.
Ooh.
Suddenly, Umu entered the limelight again, because Monsteller had been trying to find a possible 2-cycle strat for Nail 0 on the new patch. Now that the boss had 300 HP and not 250, it seemed impossible for a while. But Monsteller was determined to make it work. So after hours upon hours spent in that boss room practicing,
I like this
he found
edit.
this cycle. Once again, getting the boss stuck in the bottom platform was key. First, you would lure Umu's first 3 attacks, here, here, and here, while dream nailing to full soul and getting them to the middle platform. Then, right as Quirrell opened the first damage cycle, you took a damage tank, to stay as close to the boss as possible. As soon as it opened, you had to perform this precise set of attacks. Fireball, nail, nail, fireball, nail, nail,
Fireball, nail, nail,
and then
fireball.
Fireball. If
Oh
performed
my god, you got
correctly, the
that
final
much
2
soul
nail
from
hits
it?
would dislodge Umu from the platform, allowing one of the last 2 fireballs to knock the boss back and double hit, right as the boss closed. The result was
damn!
exactly 150 damage. This was already a really precise set of moves, and it only got harder from here. Now you had the tall task of luring Umu back into the same spot in only 2 attacks, while squeezing in 3 dream nails to regain full soul.
Yeah.
Then you perform the exact same cycle again, and if done correctly, you could just barely kill the boss in 2 cycles.
Wows.
And remember, Umu's RNG was the worst in the entire run, and getting the unlucky 25% chance extra attack would not only lose you time, but also jeopardize the setup. Crucially though, Monster had proved it was possible. And while other runners were initially dismayed, everyone knew that the more they practiced it, the less outrageous it would become. Trinomi took interest. These were just the discoveries he needed to catch up to Fire's lead. All he needed to do was be the first to pull off a run with the new strats. So, armed with Scurry's improved city and Monster's Umu 2 cycle, Trinomi started a run. He had already gotten a PB with the new discoveries, a solid 35:52, about 30 seconds off the world record. And with a solid first half, you could tell he was gearing up to be on pace. He lost some time on Watchers and ended up neck and neck with his PB upon Archives. Now, he went for the Umu 2 cycle. After luring Umu into place...
But he got a 1 cycle.
So far, so good. Now for the second cycle. Trinomi recovered his soul and barely positioned into place in time for Umu's opening.
So fucking well played.
And just like that,
Holy shit.
Umu was dead. The pressure of having hit the trick got to him though. He missed QGA twice and had to stop to heal, losing about 10 seconds. He was determined to see this run through though, and previous runs of his had also stumbled in late game. Due to this, Trinomi saved an astonishing 31 seconds in Beastden. He kept this momentum to the end, and with a solid THK, he ended a run with a 35:21, a new world record by 3 seconds. Soon enough,
3
Fire returned
seconds.
to grind with the new strats as well. And on the 25th of February, the day after the game's 1-year anniversary, Fire got on this run. A pretty good pace that unfortunately fumbled the Ubu 2 cycle.
Oh, it
He
actually
continued, undeterred by the
dipped
mistake,
a bit.
and just like
Oh.
Trinomi before him,
That
he
fucking
played late
sucks.
game incredibly well.
No,
A
the
super clean
grab!
Queen's Gardens and a confident Beastden performance netted 24 seconds of time save against this comparison. And upon entering the final boss, Fire kept the momentum going. Another super solid THK led to the timer stopping at a 35:14, beating Trinomi's run by 9 seconds. A new world record to start off a new year for Hollow Knight speedrunning. And look how far it had come in just a single year.
Yep.
Scrolling through a list of world records at this point, you would see a whole lot of Fireborn. In fact,
Wait.
this run
Mac's name was Magala? I guess
was
was.
his 12th world record. At this point, Fire felt pretty content with his time, and took a break to go speedrun the newly released Celeste. And he wasn't alone in this, because Celeste, famously, was a real speedrunner magnet. So many NMG runners left for Celeste that the Great Celeste Exodus became a running joke in the community. Trinomi, however, was still interested in being the first to break the 35-minute barrier. As Fire had learned the new strats to beat him, Trinomi had been busy improving even further. He had spent some time labbing movement and improving various rooms, and decided to reap the fruits of his labor by doing some more attempts. At this point, runs had gotten quite consistent until the Watcher Nights, and Trinomi's attempt would mirror that. The Watcher Nights? Huh. Let's stop for a second and talk about them. In the early days of the Barebones route, this fight was about one thing only: surviving. But as time went on, it started to look more as if the Watchers were stuck in the room with the Knights,
I knew
rather
it.
than vice versa.
I knew who
A
were gonna
few
go
main
for that because I
principles
wanted
runners
to go for
started
that.
sticking to were the following.
That joke.
Firstly, this damage rotation of continually nail hitting, fireballing, and jumping around the Watcher as it slashes became the main principle. Once the first beetle was down, the goal was to always stand so that you could fireball both of them. The exception for this was when one of them did the long roll, where just like with THK, runners would hop over and fireball along the
Ooh,
wall,
yeah,
getting a
yeah,
nice
that's good.
triple hit for 60 damage.
I should do that in my
both of them would
P5.
also bunch up so that you could hit them both with the same nail swing.
I'm gonna say this again. I don't remember ever dying to these guys. Even the first time I met him. You can call me cool. Sorry.
In this fight, soul management mattered a lot, as you would lose out on damage if the Watchers rolled when you didn't have a cast available. So the main gist was, if you're not dealing damage, preferably to both beetles at once, you're losing time. It was a fight of split-second decisions, and if done right, absolutely mesmerizing to observe. After a good Watcher Knights fight,
Yeah,
Trinomi
that's
would
good.
showcase some of the new stuff he had learned over the last few weeks. After buying Lantern, he breezed through this awkward infected room and performed a new strat.
Awkward.
The Scurry Lookdown. Can you guess in the comments who found this strat? Who could it possibly be?
Mag found it. Mag found it. Wait, did he stop? No, wait, he stopped, right? If he stopped, then it's Fireborn.
While messing around with the tolls, Scurry had noticed that the gates opened a bit faster if you healed while waiting. They messed around further and realized this happened even sooner if you look down. The reason for this is the way the gates are coded. Upon purchasing the toll, an animation starts that takes a few seconds, upon which an animation end trigger is activated, which opens the door. However, due to a small oversight, this animation trigger wasn't specific to the door. So beginning and ending an animation, such as looking down briefly, would also trigger it, opening the door much sooner. After a really solid crystal peak, Trinomi continued forth. He had a good pace going, but the hardest part was...
Oh wait, was it Trinomi that figured it out? It was probably Trinomi. I think it was Bait the impossible thing. Okay, yeah, shut up. I'm stupid, okay?
UGA through Deep Nest into Den. Trinomi decided to give it his all. Trinomi had reached the final boss with a staggering 43 seconds of time save, already on pace to shatter the world record by 36 seconds. But Trinomi knew there was potential for even more.
Okay.
Recently, he had learned a new strat, the THK Scream Skip. If a player falls into the final boss, right as it performs its last cycle change scream, they can be knocked out of the screen's stun state. This
that is goated!
To the pause early control.
That is fucking insane.
The game takes away your control with the scream, and then the damage attempts to do the same with the knockback animation. As the knockback animation ends, the game gives back control to the player, allowing them to tear into the boss even earlier while it's incapacitated.
Wow.
It was hard to do, as you had to predict when the boss would do the scream to get into position. But if Trinomi could hit this trick on a good fight, it would save tons of time. So, he went for it.
By tons, I mean like 3 seconds. That is a lot. That is a lot in speedrunning.
34:34. An absolutely ridiculous time, fully showing off the potential of all the new
well done,
strats
Trinomi.
with such impeccable execution.
He did it. He wanted to shadow 35.
World record. He would continue to contribute more strats to the community, most famously the Trinomi drop, a fast and consistent way to move through this room without stopping. According to the speedrun community lore,
saw that by Leb
Trinomi left to renovate his bathroom, and never returned to speedrunning. Bathroom turned out pretty great though. Before we continue, I'd like to do a little bit of a small channel update. By the looks of it, after I graduate the Swedish equivalent of high school in June, I might be going full-time with this whole YouTube and Twitch thing, at least for a while I try to figure out what I want to study in university.
What a dream.
So, for that reason, I've decided to open memberships on my channel. It's honestly a huge privilege to be in a position to even be able to do this. And
the thing is... He opened it at 130k. I just opened it because I had the opportunity. I mean, it's not like anyone has to do it, but you'll get like 4 emotes. Isn't that crazy? And I had to show for it. But yeah, that's well done. Well done. Let's do something here. Let's do something here. Subscribe. A lot of effort, research, and all of that has gone into this, and we're gonna like it now, which you guys should do as well with this video and his video. Really well put together.
Stuff for members now and then, and in fact, this video is going to have a bonus video connected to it. More about that at the end. Anyway, thank you all for the support, everyone. It means a ton.
You're welcome.
Let's get back to the video.
I got here today.
Also, subscribe if you want to. This video took 2 months to make.
This is just like, oh yeah, let me get a subscribe thingy without background, and this is exactly what you get. You would have to remove that shit yourself. Always. There are some rare occasions where you don't have to. But that's a little cheat code. You can copy some images, put it into Discord, and then open original, and then you can put it inside of Paint. 3D Paint, or what is it called? Photoshop.
Now that both Trinomi and Fire were out of the picture, a new batch of runners seized the moment to continue pushing the category further.
Who is it?
I've already named Scurry, but the other important names here are Homothety, Visuals, and Fast Attack. Fast Attack was first to show off his potential. He had been improving, well, fast, at the game, and had kept up impressively well with Fire and Trinomi's times despite being a newer runner. About a month after Trinomi's 34, Fast Attack would show off his prowess by claiming the top spot in the category, and beating Trinomi by a few seconds. Strat-wise, this was pretty similar to Trinomi's run, with a little bit better execution here and there. Fast Attack's world record would be the longest standing record yet, impressively lasting almost 4 entire months. During this time, Scurry and Visuals formed a bit of a friendly rivalry, motivating each other to push down their times and beat one another. And these sorts of friendly rivalries always proved to act as a potent motivator for improvement, so it really wasn't much of a surprise when the two rapidly closed in on Fast Attack's time over the summer. In late July, Viz struck first, beating the world record by 4 seconds. Scurry took a little while to respond, as while they had gotten good at any percent,
hey,
they had
Radiance.
also become
No,
a
that's
top runner in
absolute.
True Ending, any percent's larger, even harder sibling category. But once they returned to
I
any
think
percent in October,
it's
they
both.
showed what made them special as a runner, because being the best at one category wasn't enough. Viz had beaten Fast Attack's time by 4 seconds, so Scurry beat him by another 4. At this point, Viz had also picked up True Ending, and these two runners would continue their rivalry across both categories, vying to claim the world record from one another.
Oh, Lamau, I'm not actually sure if I can show this time on YouTube. Imagine a big booba anime girl here as the live split background. He was on a pretty good pace though, Lamau.
A month after Scurry's run, Viz fired back with an 8-second improvement in any. The category was getting really close to the 34 barrier now, with only 11 seconds remaining.
I wonder if
and
Fireborn
everyone
is gonna
wanted
come
be the
back to
first
this.
cross it.
Oh,
The run had
in this
started to get
video.
really optimized,
There's still
but it was
over an
clear
hour
there
left.
was a lot of time to be saved, especially since runners were still playing quite safe in late game. Remember Homothety though? I haven't mentioned him yet. Well, now it was his time to shine. Homothety had quickly made a name for himself in the game's blooming randomizer community, and eventually he picked up speedrunning as well. Ever since joining the scene around Fire's first 35, he had watched many of his fellow runners claim the world record over the months. So, as 2019 started, he decided he would take a crack at it as well. And soon, he would surprise everyone with a pretty impressive run. Because, with a final time of 33:58, Homothety became the first runner to break the 33-minute barrier. Quite an
Good shit.
impressive achievement. And while this was Homothety's only world record in any percent, he still left a mark, and would continue to improve his time. He would come up with some really clever tricks, such as the Homothety Fireball and the Crystal Peak Gauntlet, and he would go on to become a really pivotal figure in the game's randomizer scene. As February 24th came and went, the game was now 2 years old. In just the last year, a lot had happened. The community was growing rapidly, and there was a thriving batch of top runners. Around this point in time, 2 new runners would join their ranks.
Ooh.
Pestilent Box 2 and Axe 2U. Around this time, the first iteration of the modern debug mod had also been released, thanks to a joint effort by modders 56 and Sabrina. This was an excellent practice tool, allowing runners to set save states anywhere in the game, and eventually display hitboxes. Now that the free big time saves were expended, and the top runs featured less and less mistakes, the arrival of a proper practice tool allowed runners to shift their focus to micro-optimizations and polishing room movement. Because even a few deciseconds here and there saved would add up eventually. Scurry would also attempt to get their own 33, beating Homothety in the process. And just like Homothety, this would be their final time holding a world record in any percent. As I mentioned earlier, Scurry would continue running True Ending, and they would bring their rivalry with Visuals there as well, with many world records, and together collaboratively/competitively pushing down the category's time by many minutes. Our story in any percent continues, however, with the return of a runner who had been away for over a year. Because Fireborn was back. He had briefly run Celeste and held really competitive times there.
Fireball is back, baby!
Being an amazing speed game was really hard on his hands, leading to him getting a repetitive strain injury in his wrists. This had forced Fire to take multiple months away from dedicatedly grinding anything. He returned just as Scurry claimed their record, and was really excited by all the optimizations and improvements the runners had implemented while he was gone. So, he started practicing to get back up to speed. And with Fire's patience and practice discipline, it didn't take long before he was ready to start doing attempts. On the 5th of April, Fire booted up a brand new save file, with the intention to beat Scurry's world record. And this run, for the first time in over a year, featured a change in the routing. Namely, the boomer rocks were finally archaic. They were a fast source of geo in the early game, but they required turning back and walking in the opposite direction of Hornet. So runners had considered various alternatives. It needed to be a fast geo source, but also be located before Mantis Claw in the route. Hold on. What's that noise? Wait, what are you doing here, Zote? Oh. Well, it was found that by jumping and performing this quick set of attacks, you could dispatch the Vengefly King before it even moved or screamed, making the Geo fall conveniently into this platform for an easy recovery. This checked all the boxes. Anyway, Fire was the first to implement this Geo route in his run, but it gave him a lot less wiggle room as the Geo route was now very tight. He needed about 206 Geo by Mantis Claw to afford the Stag and Shaman Stone, and was gonna need to supplement some of the removed Geo from city enemies. But it was a net time save. By the end of the run, Fire had claimed his own 33 and the world record with it. But as he had proven countless times at this point, he wasn't done at all.
Yeah, exactly. He's gonna keep going.
Days
Hell
later,
yeah.
He set out on another run. And just like that, he cut the time by another 6 seconds. Fire's grind would continue over the summer, and during this time, he would implement a lot of new strats.
He just hit the pickaxe. Boulder insta-kill. You can do that? Oh, it looks so good. It just gets cleaner and cleaner every time. Perfect timed.
Fire had had one hell of a summer, cutting down the world record all the way to 33:24. The time was getting quite optimized, and at this point, people started wondering about a 32 being possible. Now, a really exciting thing happened. At the end of the year, the growing and thriving speedrun community decided it would be fun to host a tournament for the category. This got the 24 participants, including the former and current top runners Fire, Viz, Hemothety, Scurry, Trinomi, Pest, and Axe2U all together, all running the category actively at once for the first time. Pest and Axe were both newer runners, but they were improving rapidly, and by the time the tournament started, had both attained PBs within the top 5. And the tournament proved an excellent motivator, becoming a real rallying point for the runners to come up with improved strategies, shave time from room movement, and most importantly, grind, grind, grind. A few notable strat discoveries of this time were located in the Fungal Waste segment. Firstly, the standard E-Pogo was rapidly improved, and over time multiple variants were found. Here, Fireborn found the Fireball E-Pogo and the Slash Damage Tank Pogo, two much harder variants that avoided waiting until the spore naturally expired. A few rooms after was the Mantis Pogo. This trick was performed to skip traversing around this long room after hitting the claw lever, and for ages, runners would just wing it and hope for the best. Countless attempts at labbing it were made, but no one could quite figure it out. Luckily, runners Axe2U and Risky CB realized the Mantises always moved consistently in relation to the player, and figured out this consistent, fast, yet tricky setup, dubbed the Double Dash Mantis Pogo for obvious reasons. This would quickly become the standard and is still used to this day. Fireborn and Visuals performed really well in the tournament, unsurprisingly with their experience. But what was perhaps more impressive was Axe2U and Pest's performances. In the middle of the tournament, Axe2U would excitedly post this screenshot to the rest of the runners. He had gotten a fantastic new world record of 33:22, beating Fire's August time by 2 seconds. This was huge and really exciting for Axe, who had shot up the leaderboard since switching from 106 runs only a month or two prior. At least, it was exciting, until he tabbed over to OBS to stop the recording. Silent shock came over him as he stared at the start recording prompt on the screen. Axe hadn't recorded the run. This was a disappointing moment for him, as the world record would never appear on the leaderboards, even though everyone knew that this was the new fastest time. As the weeks passed, the tournament carried on, and it really was something quite special.
Am I recording?
All of the top runners like never before, and perhaps most importantly, made them all work extensively on their consistency. In a race setting, you had to make sure you could perform all of the hard work without the privilege of an opportunity to simply reset the run and try again. And this showed in the leaderboard throughout, as the top 5 started to get remarkably close. Pest in particular had quite an impressive performance. Despite only starting his speedrunning journey at the end of 2018, Pest only lost against Trinomi and Homothety, and landed at a respectable 4th place in the tournament. But not only that, but he did something else interesting as well. With the tournament finals nearing, Pest made his debut to the world record spot, beating out Axe's unrecorded run by another 2 seconds, showing an early glimpse to his potential as a runner. Fire would not let Pest's record stand for long, as he was currently performing at his very best for the tournament. He was raking in consistent 33s in his matches, and had won every single one, aside from his match with Viz. 4 days after Pest's run, Fire set out on his own attempts. He returned with a 33-17, Fireborn's 18th world record. Truly, no one could stop this man. He was simply too fast.
He's too
Regardless
good.
of every other top runner being just as active, despite Fire's recent break pre-tournament, he simply found himself at the top of the leaderboard again by the end anyway. December began, and the grand final between Viz and Fire was
The
scheduled.
goat.
Both runners were putting in their final grind before they would be put to the ultimate test, attempting to polish their strategies and maybe even squeeze in a PB before the final race.
So insane.
For Fire, winning the tournament and having world record on top of that would be the decisive show that he at that point in time was the undeniable GOAT. But proof would come earlier than the races, because on December 9th, 11 days before the tournament finals, Fireborn set out on this run. And just like that, his magnum opus had crystallized. 33:07 was the final time, and Fire's prowess shone through it like never before. The mistakes were almost non-existent. Clean boss fights, a good Umu, and good management of the nerves of such a strong pace into late game netted him an astonishingly fast final time. And with that as a backdrop, came the tournament's conclusion. In a blisteringly fast performance from both runners, Fire and Viz remained tied to the second to the very end of the race, almost looking like the same video played back twice.
That's
At this point,
fucking...
really it was anyone's
That's so
game.
insane.
The THK fight came and went, and both runners absorbed the infection simultaneously. I'll just play the clip.
Really? This is gonna PB for sure.
I got Tiny now.
Oh my god!
Holy
Oh
shit.
my god. That's insane.
Holy
They
fuck,
had
dude.
tied the tournament grand final to the second, and Fire had won the second of 2 final matches by only 3 centiseconds. Fireborn had been crowned the king of any percent.
For now. For now. There's still a lot
His
of this
tournament
video
win
to
and
go, I'm
astonishing
pretty sure.
leaderboard time would mark his grandest achievement in the speedrun. With some personal life events occurring at this time, his recurring repetitive strain wrist injuries, and soon, the explosion of popularity of his YouTube channel. Congrats on 500k, by the way, Fire. He
Yo,
shifted his focus
grats.
to making Hollow Knight speedrunning
Grats.
content going forward. Fireborn's 33:07 would be his final world record, and it would last for
His
a very long time.
Final?
But wow, what a legacy to leave behind. 19 world records, including the first 38, 37, 36, and 35, and landing on the cusp of breaking a barrier thought to be unfeasible only a year prior. But some fires can't burn forever, I suppose. And now, time passed. February of 2020 came and went, and with it, the game's 3rd anniversary. With the tournament concluded, most runners shifted their attention to other things for a while, and Fire's groundbreaking record remained uncontested. While the top spots on the leaderboard were stagnant, it would be very incorrect to say the category as a whole was. This was a period of immense growth for the Hollow Knight community. In fact, it was around April of this year that I played Hollow Knight for the first time, at the age of 13. And in June, I started my
As
own
no way
speedrunning journey
13-year-olds
with,
existed
you
in
guessed it,
2020.
any percent runs
Come
myself.
on now.
And just as I did, Pestilent Box 2 would start running the category again. And pretty soon, he would make history once again. Because on June 6th, 2020, he started this run.
Oh, he didn't get hit! Oh wait, that was the start of the fight. Never mind. The phase change. He got it. He got it. Get it!
Let's fucking go. That's good.
That's insane. That's insanely good.
With an insane 12-second world record, Pest had broken the 33-minute barrier and crossed into the uncharted 32.
Welcome, Pest,
only a year
to the Hall of
prior,
Fame.
This time was thought to be completely impossible, but with Pest's skill, it really wasn't.
Nope.
He had completely embraced segment practice as a way to improve, and despite not having anyone else competing to motivate himself, he had enough of an internal motivation to continue his grind.
He just wanted to be the best.
Fire, he was a calm, collected runner who had the patience to sit for hours and hours, repeating the same room or boss fight over.
And meanwhile, there's me who's like, oh, I don't like gauntlets. I don't like to do P5, practice P5 because it takes 40 minutes per attempt. And meanwhile, these guys just use thousands of hours to do this. It's insane. It's insane. Admirable too. But I mean, I am actually more fan of P5 now since like it looks like I can see the end. Stay tuned for that video at least.
Again. And once again, this world record would stand for a really long time. In fact, it would stand for almost an entire year until someone beat it. Who was that someone? Well, it was Pest. Again.
I was about to say Fireborn, but he did say it was his last.
Then, he did it again.
Of course. This man is determinated. Determinated?
And again.
Determined. Determinated. Pest is going ham. And again. And again.
And again.
Exactly. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go, Pest. And again.
And again.
Of course.
So far, 2021 was undeniably Pest's year. He had showed that he had an unparalleled dedication to practice and polish when it came to speedrunning, and single-handedly bringing the most optimized category down by almost a minute was an incredibly impressive feat. Outside of maybe Fireborn before him, there really hadn't been a runner quite like Pest, who would continue to push the time down by themselves despite no external motivations from other people vying for the record. If you look at the leaderboard at this point, you could see that Pest was truly in a league of his own. And the exciting part was, soon a double bombshell would drop on the Any% community. Due to a groundbreaking discovery by a top-level 112, 106, and all-skills runner by the name of Scruffy. Scruffy was a really interesting runner, incredibly skilled but also a bit mysterious to the community. They didn't stream, rarely spoke in the speedrun Discord, and still contributed various reroutes and finds to their respective speedrun categories. The joke was that every few months, Scruffy would return, drop a crazy new world record, and in it, one or two never-before-seen ideas. And this is exactly what Scruffy did when he submitted this new all-skills world record in June of 2021. By the Mantis Claw pickup, Scruffy would lure this Mantis youth to follow him to the item, and have the Mantis damage him right as he picked up Claw. Just like the THK Scream skip I explained earlier, this would give the player control back of their character, allowing them to quit out or move as soon as the game has registered the ability as collected, without waiting for the extended pickup screen. Runners quickly figured out setups for this, and found out this was a whole 3 seconds of net time save. 4 or so lost from the wait, but 7 saved from the early control. Scruffy wasn't done making big finds though, as their next would prove even more groundbreaking. On the 25th of May, they posted this video to the other runners.
Yeah, there it is.
Scruffy had found yet another way to get wall-cling storage. Wall-cling storage is a glitch where the player tricks the game into thinking they're touching a wall when they're not. On patch 1221, you're able to preserve your dash momentum through wall-cling storage by grabbing onto this imaginary wall. making you, for the lack of a better term, go zoom zoom.
Scruffy is insane.
Performed this for years on doors as they opened, and more recently they had been found for elevators as well. But it turned out you could get walkling storage through simply standing at the correct distance from almost any corner in the game. Here, Scruffy had found a setup using nail hits against this wall to move them a consistent distance away from the wall, allowing a neutral dash to land them right here, in a weird position where the game thinks they're touching this wall, but really they're not. When they now move away, the game doesn't remove the wall because there's nothing to let go of.
Exactly.
So Scruffy could now jump, dash, and press left, clinging onto the imaginary wall in midair and preserving their dash momentum. What's better is that the water of Blue Lake doesn't count as landing either, so the walkling state is preserved throughout the lake, allowing runners to zoom across at high speeds. You are able to chain walkling storage normally as well, but you have to jump on the first physics frame of landing, that is, a 50th of a second. The Blue Lake by itself only saved a few seconds, but this got runners very curious about where else walkling storage setups could be found. And it didn't take long until another major walkling storage find was made. While messing around with it, runner Constructive Cynicism realized you could get walkling storage on any vertical transition. He found that you could preserve your wall touching state if you just touched a wall on the way down through the transition. Now, just like the walkling storage chains of before, if you jumped on the first physics frame of landing in the next room, you could maintain your walkling storage. This resulted in this extremely flashy room, and made the previously simple segment of Chandelier really exciting. Soon, the debut of the first ever tool-assisted speedrun created by Constructive Cynicism himself would really showcase just how crazy walkling storage could get. Armed with all of these new time saves, Pest once again got back to running the game, quickly getting a 2-second improvement by using the new strats.
2 seconds?
He knew there was a lot of time to squeeze out of the run still, so he didn't stop there.
Of course he
Pretty soon,
didn't.
He would get this pace. Again, the new strats were executed really cleanly, putting him at a decent pace from the very get-go. He managed to carry this momentum all the way to late game, with solidly executed boss fights and good movement. And unlike Fire, Pest saved the grub. At the finish line though, he would get scammed out of the screen.
See, that is why Pest is the MVP. Saving the grub is always top priority. Good.
Skip due to the boss teleporting to the middle before doing it. But despite losing a few seconds to that, he still finished out an incredibly strong run. As he absorbed the infection and the timer ticked to a halt, he had achieved a new world record. Pest had beaten his world record again by an additional 8 seconds, and he was now in the lower range of 32. And he still wasn't done yet, despite being bounds ahead of any other runner. He knew he still had a few seconds of polish to squeeze out of the new finds, so at the end of September, he started doing runs again.
Uh-oh. So what was he gonna beat? 32.25, I think it was?
Pest reached Umu on a crazy pace, and it remained to be seen if the boss was gonna let him through. At this point, he was about 5 seconds ahead of his own world record, on pace for a run in the 32.1x range. And the good part was, Umu had mercy.
Okay.
He's fired up, let's go.
But he pushed through it, determined to make this run work. After some small throws in Umu and Den, he managed to carry the pace through to the final boss. Now, all he needed was a good THK fight with not too many parries.
Jesus.
Oh my god, is that it? Oh my god, is it it?
Suck it
please
in!
Tell me, please, 1x, please 1x. It is! Oh my god.
Let's go.
16?
The final cutscene started playing, and Pest had finished Hollow Knight in 32 minutes and 16 seconds.
Well done.
Unbelievable performance.
Well done, Pest.
And now, he was standing on the cusp of another minute barrier. And it would probably be the last one for real this
Wait,
time.
isn't this wrong? It was 32.16. Doesn't matter.
Looking at the community sum of best at the time, that is, all the best splits added together into a theoretical perfect human time, it seemed that way at least. While his run wasn't completely perfect, with some time lost in late game, it was getting really hard to see any full seconds of potential time save anywhere. So, after the 32:16, he was satisfied, and took a really long, well-deserved break from speedrunning. And his world record would stand for a really, really, really long time.
Until
the end of
I came around.
Came and went, and so did the game's 4th anniversary on February 24th, 2022. Because of how insanely ahead of his time, that's a speedrun pun for you, Pest was with his world record, the closest leaderboard competitor stayed Fireborn's old record for a good while. But one by one, other speedrunners made their own crack at least being the second to break the 32 barrier. And for those that didn't want to stop there, it became a race to get the second place, the so-called non-Pest world record. And one by one, each of them would approach the barrier. Axe to You came first, while Pest still had a high...
This guy is using keyboard and mouse? Well, just keyboard, I guess.
In May of 2021. He had returned at the start of the year, aiming to improve his time from his unrecorded record. After a few weeks of grinding, he pulled it off, with an incredibly close run, barely crossing the minute barrier with a 32:59.
Hey! Hey! Insane.
32, baby!
Axe's run, while not even close to Pest's insane world record, had a secondary and arguably more important effect in the long term. It managed to engage the community and motivate the Any% runners who had dropped the category. And slowly, the top runner scene for Any% awakened from its Pest-induced hibernation. During the end of 2021 and start of 2022, newer but established runners Squonky, Lep19, Skate King, Unyo,
Lep.
Rhino Feeder,
We know Lep. We know Lep. And Skate King, I heard that he... I'm not gonna spoil that.
and Jackman Marcus made a push together, using their 6-way friendly rivalry to motivate each other to continue improving. And this incidental approach came with some pretty serious results. Third came Gonki, who had put in an arduous grind for the 32, streaming non-stop for over a week until she got it. Through sheer dedication, she rapidly turned from an inexperienced runner to a top contender in the most optimized category. After her came Unyo at the end of July with a super cleanly played run, landing at the final time of 32:53. He was followed by Rhino Feeder, who with his 32:57 put the whole top 5 in the 32 range. And throughout the first half of 2022, there were 8 runners who achieved the amazing milestone of a 32 in Any%, almost putting the entire top 10 under the barrier. A few of them decided they could push further though, so after a brief period of running other categories, Gonki decided to keep going. And she wasn't alone in this, as Lep and Skate, her new top runner peers, also continued grinding down their times. And down they went, a few seconds at a time.
Holy shit.
As the first half of the year concluded, they were
Holy
getting really close
fuck.
to Pest's time, with Gonki being only a second off. Because the category had gotten so very optimized, runners would spend hours upon hours in each individual room of movement, trying to squeeze out every last possible millisecond. Just to demonstrate the results of this, let's take a snapshot of a single room in the game. Here's a video of Fireborn's 3307 from a few years prior, an impeccably performed run for the time. And here was Lep's movement. As they grinded, runners like Lep, Skate, Jackman Marcus, and Gonki made countless tiny improvements like this all over the run. In some cases, it meant a gnarly transition or gate walkling storage strat, such as this one in Teacher's Archives.
Yeah,
And in
that's
some
so
cases,
wonky.
It meant, well, simply doing it faster, cutting around corners more cleanly, doing a more optimal C-dash, and so on. And in some cases, all this time spent thinking about and timing different strats came with a secondary, more favorable consequence, a change in the geo-routing. Now, ever since the middle of 2019, people had gotten early game geo from the Vengefly King. This was really fast, but gave quite limited geo, so in runs you had to fireball a few city enemies to account for this. In other categories where more geo was required in the early game, runners would opt for the Moss Knights right below. In total, the rocks and the 2 Moss Knights carried significantly more geo, and with this really fast Moss Knight strat the all skills runners had found, it really didn't take much longer. The idea was that the Moss Knights would allow runners to play even more aggressively in City and therefore be a net time save. Skate, Lep, and Guanqi quickly implemented this into their runs, and throughout the first half of 2022, the PBs just kept coming. Little by little, all 3 would approach Pest's world record, continuously bumping each other out of second place. And now, for the first time in over 2 years, a question became active in people's minds. Who would be the first to beat Pest and claim a new world record?
I think Guanqi.
As the first half of the year reached its conclusion, it was really anyone's game. On the 2nd of August 2022, Guanqi set out on another session of run attempts, vying to decisively answer that very question. It started out really strong, with a super clean early game, leaving her at a 12:50 Dreamnail segment. At the time, the fastest ever pace had been a 12:4x, so she was doing really well for herself. In Watcher Nights, she got some really unlucky patterns on the final pair, resulting in a nail-biting 1 HP recovery and a little bit of time loss. A clean City exit and Crystal Peak followed. The real question was Umu. So one more time, let's talk about Umu. Top runners had mastered the Nail 0-2 cycle long ago, and what remained was essentially the dice roll element of what attacks it did, and whether there were any extra attacks. Because remember, due to the boss's structure, you could lose up to 25 seconds here if you were unlucky, with the fastest pattern of fast,
boss
slow,
sucks.
fast,
Boss
only
sucks.
appearing about 3%
It's just the way it
of
is.
the time. And being located 2/3 through the run, you can imagine how many of Skate's, Lep's, and Guanqi's world record paces had reached this point before, only to succumb to luck. This run of Guanqi's, however, would not be one of them, because one after the other the attacks came. Slow, fast, slow. First
Fast.
cycle.
Oh.
Fast, fast. Second cycle. The run was through Umu with the second best possible pattern. And now all she had to do was not succumb to the nerves, with arguably the hardest section of the run still ahead of her. A single mistake would have to be carried all the way through to Hera the Beast. This run didn't really have any of those. Gardens went smoothly, and she entered the Beast Den just tied with Pest's world record.
Ooh.
The den started out strong, but you could tell the nerves was making Guanqi's hand shake. This led to a collision with this spider, which would have been negligible time-wise if it weren't for the fact that she was tied with the world record. If she got hit again, it would force her to lose significant time, as it would prevent the damage tank fast kill on the final devout from being doable. Luckily, we can all exhale, because she made it through alright. Now, there was just the Hollow Knight left. After the small hiccups in Den, a really good fight would be necessary. The chains broke, and the boss roared, and one by one, the nail hits fell. The boss did a fast scream, catching Guanqi off guard and causing her to miss the scream skip, which lost her a second or two. All she could do now was continue the flurry of rapid hits and dispatch the boss, hoping that the mistake hadn't cost her the record. THK fell, and Guanqi absorbed the infection. A nail-biting silence. And then, the timer stopped. Just
She
there,
did it.
a new world
She
record
did it.
by a single second. After 2 years of Pest dominating the leaderboard, his time had finally been beaten.
It's the
new world
era
record
of
wouldn't stand for
Guanqi.
long though, because Lep was doing his own attempts. His remarkable patience and calm, focused attitude to speedrunning had led to rapid improvement, and at this point he had the lowest summa best segments out of any runner, and the most community summa bests out of anyone. And when I say his patience was unmatched, I really mean it. For instance, in his third place PB back in March, he took a massive throw in fungal wastes on a good pace, missing Ipugo not once, not twice, but 3 times, losing him 17 seconds. His reaction? He didn't reset. He didn't even raise his voice. He said, and simply kept going. Lep proceeded to beat his personal best by 20 whole seconds, landing just behind Guanqi's recent 32:21. In a top-level run with this level of optimization, this sort of recovery was simply unheard of. So, going back to where we were in the timeline, he had been diligently grinding segment practice to a degree that no one else could match. And he was ready to go for a world record of his own, with serious potential to maybe even break the final minute barrier himself. The paces were coming every single day, and it was really only a matter of time at this point until he would get a run where Umu decided to let him through. And in late October, that's exactly what would happen. With his previous PB's mishaps, most of the time save was now concentrated into a single split. So when he reached Mantis Claw smoothly this time, he was now 16 seconds ahead. Now came the harder task, managing to not lose that time throughout the rest of the run.
16
Lep did one
seconds?
better by continuing to save even more time throughout City. After a cleanly played Watchers, he was off to Crystal Peak. No. Well, Lep wasn't immune to nerves either, but his superpower as a runner truly lied in his calm demeanor. So, he kept going, unfazed by the unexpected and albeit pretty funny time loss. Going into Umu, he was still on an insanely good pace, potentially being able to squeeze out a low 32-0x. But once again, the question was whether Umu would let him through into late game. The 2-cycle was a given at this point, but the attacks were not. Lep started the fight. First cycle. Slow, fast, fast. No extra attack. Alright, so far so good. Slow, fast. No extra attack. And just like that, Lep was through the fight with his pace intact. Now, he had to just not fuck it up. Because
kind of sucks that it relies on RNG though.
7 whole seconds ahead of Guanqi's world record. But he had an ace up his sleeve. Once he reached Beast Den, he did something different. Instead of stopping to do the devout fast kill, he debuted this new strat. This was the consistent devout skip. The setup had been a recent find, pioneered by top-level any % runners Magma and Axel. The devouts have an invisible sloped wall hitbox inside of them, preventing players from simply damage tanking through them. Players had known for long that you could jump over the first devout if it happened to back up, but that was way too inconsistent to go for in runs. However, the gap in the ceiling above the first devout is just high enough that by luring the devout to attack right away with a slash, one can do a precise dash into the devout, pushing the knight up along the slope and barely squeezing through this tiny gap thanks to some collision deck as the devout pushes the knight into the wall. This find, combined with the surplus of Geo given from the Moss Knights in early game, made runners able to skip getting the devout's 35 Geo and still afford the distant village stag. All of this would result in a time save of about 3 seconds. As Lep entered Den on his insane pace, he went for that very strat.
I had this audio as placeholder so I know where to put the clip, but I thought it was kind of funny, so I'll leave it here. Perfect devout skip impression.
Executing it cleanly, he soared through the rest of the Den. And
fair
once
enough.
There
a person of culture
standing between him and a crazy new world record. And with a good THK, this could even break the final minute barrier. No pressure. This time, he went through the crossroads stag without fumbling. He broke the chains, and once again, all he could do was play his
He's
best,
so fucking fast there.
Attack pattern wasn't too unlucky. And unfortunately, just like in Guanqi's run, he got hit by a fast scream and missed the scream skip. A few more nail hits though, and it was over. Now the question remained, just how much time had he saved?
He has saved so much time.
And absorbed, the timer ticked to completion.
No!
32 minutes.
Almost beat the fucking barrier.
Lep had obliterated the world record by over 11 seconds.
That's insane.
Instantly, the jokes about, quote-unquote, this being a 31 if it weren't for the Dartmouth stag poured in, along with congratulations and bewilderment over his immense achievement. Lep knew he wasn't done though. In his mind, this run was far from perfect, and with some obvious blemishes and lost seconds, he knew that it was a matter of time before the minute barrier was crossed. But remember how I said this was a 3-way rivalry? What was Skate up to? Along with keeping up with Guanqi and Lep's improvements, he had been doing a lot of thinking about the route, and it looked like he had found something promising. In September, Skate King was about to find the very last reroute of this story. Ever since Scurry debuted their City Geo route over 4 years earlier, that part of the run had stayed identical. Runners would get the any % journal, get the King's Station seal, fight Gorgeous Husk, get the Watcher's seal and chest, and then sell to Lem. Skate started thinking about this a lot, around the middle point of the year. The idea was that getting the King's Station seal was really slow.
I think about Lem a lot too.
Out of any of the relics, as you had to spend significant time dashing in the opposite direction of the rest of your goals. The only viable replacement was this one, the Rafter seal outside of Lem. The issue was that simply replacing one with the other didn't actually save any time, since that was a long detour as well. However, Skate thought, if you instead were to leave Spire along the bottom, skipping the need to open this shortcut early, and then perform a Vengefly skip to get to Rafters, without having to go all the way to the elevator on the left, it could be a little bit faster. Because you were coming in from the right, you could talk to Lem by the fountain on the way towards him instead of having to make a detour. Already, the speedrun seemed to have potential to save 7 to 13 seconds with this classic left side vengefly skip that had been a pinnacle of many meme categories. Upon taking note of Skate's ideas, Magma would come up with an even crazier skip. This was the right side rafters vengefly skip, the new hardest trick in the run. And it was going to revolutionize the category, because with the help of this skip, Skate figured out that this reroute had the potential to save up to 20 seconds. Fittingly, the community gathered together to do another Any% tournament. In the 3 years since the last tournament, the category had gotten insanely optimized, which meant that the races would be really exciting to witness.
Hey!
Holy shit.
Wow.
But really most excitingly, this meant that all top contenders in Any% had a good motivation to scramble into learning Skate's new reroute, in order to gain an advantage in the races. The community took guesses at seeing where the world record would end up by its conclusion, and the first matches started. And no one could truly expect the crazy things that would occur in this tournament. On October 21st, 2022, Skate started a new run. In this run, he debuted the new Geo route with a lot of precision, hitting the right side rafters vengefly skip cleanly. In fact, Skate played the run so well that it was a world record pace going into the final fight, with potential to be the first run to break into the 31 range. Sadly, it wasn't meant to be though, as THK would parry,
parry, and parry.
And parry, and do empty jumps in the air without attacking, draining the pace of any hopes of success. Still,
that
he
fucking
finished out
sucks.
an impressive 32.07,
That fucking
putting
sucks.
Skate in second place for the first time since the rivalry began. He was an underdog in this story, having started his grind much later than Guanqi and Lep, but he was determined to keep going. On October 22nd, only a day after Skate's insane second place run, Guanqi decided to make another push to take back the record, and potentially be the first to cross the final minute barrier. She was a little bit behind Lep in sheer execution, but her PB was from before Skate's discovery, so the new route had just the time save she needed. So, if she were to match her PB's high-level gameplay, it was incredibly doable. Guanqi started a new save file and got to work. After a super clean Watcher Knights fight and first half, she reached the new hardest trick. She hit it cleanly, but had a bit of a stumble at the top, understandable with this being such a new addition to the run. From there though, it was smooth sailing, even saving a bit of time in Crystal Peak with a 157 split. I can remember only a year or so prior where getting a sub 2 Crystal Peak was unthinkable, and now runners were doing this on every single attempt. Into Beasten, she was on reasonable pace to beat Lep's world record, and maybe even the minute barrier with it. The devout skip went well, but then the den struck back, with a few hits on the spiders. This run really exemplifies how difficult it is to traverse the den quickly, and I don't think I've highlighted enough so far how big of a choke point this was for runners. Sadly, Guanqi got all the way down to 1 HP, which meant she couldn't do the fast devout kill with the damage tank.
Oh, that's bad.
Seconds. Now, 31 was out of the picture, but if she locked in, she could still claim the world record once again. And really, all she could do was take a deep breath, play her best THK, and hope it was enough. The fight began. And this time, she wouldn't be denied the scream skip either. Once again, the boss was consumed and the timer ticked on. And then it stopped. 32:03.36. Guanqi had beaten Lep's world record by half a second.
Half a second, holy
Now,
fuck.
all three top runners were within a mere 3 seconds of each other on the leaderboard. The 31 was anyone's game, really.
LipFan547
was completely unexpected. On October 28th, the speedrunning community gathered to watch one of the early matches in the tournament, Lep versus part of the Creed. Now, in a tournament setting, a lot of things were different. The most important one was that you had to aim for consistency. If you played too aggressive and died, you would essentially be guaranteed to throw the match, even against the slower opponent. And it wasn't like PB grinding. There was no resetting. You had to show up and play a good run on the spot. And that's exactly what Lep did. It started out normal. Both runners played their early games cleanly. And at some point though, the match's commentators, JX and Nerf, both very skilled Any% runners, started taking note at Lep's pace. There were no splits on display, but they could tell he was playing incredibly well. In fact, he got the community sum of best for Mothwing Cloak, that is, the fastest anyone had ever performed that segment, by 0.2 seconds. A few minutes later, he got a new community summer best for Chandelier as well. He was staying within a second of his tied with record PB, and since that run had a silly incident time save in the Crossroads stag, this run was suddenly a prospective world record pace by a lot. A wonderfully clean Watcher Knights and a flawless right side rafters had the comms awestruck. They knew they were witnessing something truly special. He passed the Crossroads stag flawlessly this time, and upon picking up Lantern, Lep was 14 seconds ahead of the world record.
14 seconds!
He kept the pace going. Umu led him through with a solid 2 cycle and the second best attack pattern. The pace remained intact.
Second
Lep had a
best.
small fumble with an acid dunk on QGA, but he quickly recovered. And judging from the rest of the gameplay, he wasn't getting too nervous. He had to lose about 3 seconds doing a fast quit out to regain his health upon entering Beast Den, since he had taken damage in the Queen's Garden segment, and then he had a little bit of a shaky Beast Den. Still though, he pushed through with 10 seconds to his name by the end. The commentators were on the edges of their seats, knowing that he was on pace to break the barrier going into the final fight. A bad THK pattern would kill it, and a good one would let him soar across the 32-minute mark. And I'll let the rest play out.
Come on! Yes! Okay, come on!
Oh my god, it's a scary skin!
Come on! Come on!
Oh my god!
Oh, is he gonna do it? Oh my god!
Oh
I think he did! At the 31!
Oh
What
my
are
god!
you on?
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
He
You're
did it.
kidding me!
Lep was the first one.
Wait,
Let's go, Lep.
do that in a race!
Lep had just barely gotten the first ever 31, and with it, a new world record in a tournament run. Absolutely incredible. Unfortunately, his OBS hard crashed right as he left Ancestral Mound, so the run wasn't submittable to the leaderboard as it didn't contain the whole video in a single segment. Here's what he had to say about that in the post-match interview.
It happens.
I knew it! I thought it was gonna be like,
He was
okay.
incredibly patient. The tournament continued, and with it, the grind, and Lep got to work on getting a submittable 31. In mid-November, he would get this 32.00, technically a new leaderboard world record. The year reached its end, and crazily enough, in the final hour, Skate would start a new run. He was gonna start off 2023 with a bang. Just like his last PB, Skate got a very strong run. And going into the final fight, he was once again on world record pace. Surely he wouldn't lose another 31 to THK. The other runners in the call wished their good luck, and Skate began the fight just 2 minutes before the new year began. He played it really well, but got a really peculiar attack pattern. Very few parries, and a rare 2 fountain attacks in the second phase.
Wow.
Skates barely clutched the scream skip also.
No.
But when the fight ended, he was left disappointed and puzzled.
Oh, dude, how? How? How?
With all those good attacks and a well-played fight, it still hadn't been enough. The timer stopped at a 32.02, right as the new year began.
Happy New Year! Skate lost to 31, GG's.
You would think that starting the year like this would be incredibly demotivating for him, but as soon it would become apparent, 2023 would be the year of Skate King. He wasn't the first to do something crazy though, because on January 2nd, Lep would start his stream for another run session. He began yet another attempt to attain a submittable 31. In early game, he saved back the few seconds he had lost in his record by tabbing out to restart OBS after the crash. But Lep would soon realize just how insane his tournament run had really been. By the time he reached Chandelier, he was 9.4 seconds behind. It was gonna take a hell of a second half to recover this. But as you know by now, Lep was the last person to preemptively give up on something. So, he played an incredible Watcher Knights fight, easily recovering half of the time loss in one
Delicious.
swoop. With a clean right side rafters and another second saved on Lantern, Lep entered the Crystal Peak toll room.
The thing is, like, it's kind of hard to react to all of this because, like, we've seen this multiple times. So by now we've seen it, like, the storytelling is good, but there's not really much to react to except the times and the reactions of the times. So yeah, it is a long react video. If you're still here, hey, I appreciate you. The GOAT, you're the GOAT.
Room, getting an incredible 5 times wall-cling storage chain from the gate.
And also, if you're seeing this, like, write in the comments, just write penguins. Penguins, you know, just penguins. Exclamation point is fine too, after. So yeah, if you're here at that time, you know who, then I'll know who you are.
As I explained earlier, each time you land on the ground, you have a physics frame, or 1/50th of a second, to jump again before the game removes your wall cling state. Lep did this 5 times in a row without breaking a sweat, soaring straight through to the room transition. Incredible stuff. He kept that same momentum through the rest of the area, and suddenly, he had shaved off another 2 seconds. Perhaps overcompensating for his earlier success, he messed up the wall cling storage into archives, but when Lep reached the Umu fight, that really wouldn't matter, because for once in hundreds and hundreds of attempts, the 3.9% perfect RNG occurred. Fast, fast, slow, no extra. Fast, fast, no extra.
Oh
and just
my
like
god.
that, Lep was barely ahead of the world record. If he could match his PB, then this would be one for the history books. Immediately, disaster struck, with a pretty painful dunk and damage tank on the way out of archives. Then, after another dunk and a 3rd try QGA, Lep's pace had vanished.
Yep.
At this insanely high level of optimization, you truly had to do everything right.
Yep.
But again, Lep wasn't the kind of runner to get frustrated or demotivated. He played Gardens well, getting down to 1 HP after the hazard warp due to the previous mishap. Quitting out Den was fine, but he had to get there without dying first, which he luckily managed without issues. He was
Easy.
now 5.8 seconds behind world record. With a tremendously good late game, it was just barely possible to turn it around due to a bad THK in the world record. So, with this hilariously atypical soothing piano hype soundtrack, he entered the den.
Hold on a second. And we're back. We are gonna finish the last 15 minutes right now.
Okay, that's it.
Come on, Lep.
Okay. Alright, folks.
31:52, a new world record with a remarkable late game clutch from Lep. And just like Fireborn and Pest before him, he celebrated his victory quite modestly. In his journey to the top, Lep had shown just how far you could push the game on a technical level, with an absolute scouring of the ComSub sheets. But perhaps his mentality and perspective on speedrunning was his biggest strength and contribution. He had realized that speedrunning sustainably at a top level was just as much about mentality and understanding yourself and your goals as it was about pure mechanical skill. Lep became the relaxed, patient counterpart to his more energetic and passionate top runner peers. You might be noticing I'm speaking pretty conclusively about Lep. He would continue to polish his time, but his top spot would soon be claimed by someone else.
Ooh.
Because, finally, it was time for Skate to be crowned king of any percent. The entire last 2-year period, Skate had been a little bit overshadowed by his peers, who seemed to always barely beat him to the big milestones. Now, he was ready to show his true potential. It started in the middle of January, pretty soon after Lep's 31:52. He was in the middle of one of his many record grind streams, just look at that attempt counter, and had managed to get a solid pace going. Skate had made a comparison that added up to a 32 flat. That meant, if he was ahead, he was on pace to break the barrier. By the time he got to Watcher Nights, he was already 2 seconds ahead. Then, he got this fight. Now, things got interesting. He followed this up with a flawless right side rafters, cementing this as a very viable pace into the second half. Crystal Peak went well and Umu was benevolent, giving the second best possible pattern of 2 slow attacks. This run was looking very promising. At this point, Skate was basically tied with Lep's record, and throughout a super solid late game, that stayed the case. Now, he had another world record pace to THK, and this time, he wasn't gonna let it slip away.
I thought I just heard a boom.
And after all, they do say the third time is the charm. 31:48. A new world record and an incredibly cathartic moment for Skate. 2 years of grinding, Thousands of hours practiced and almost 6,000 run attempts had led him to this point. It was an incredibly proud moment for him, and by extension, to the entire speedrunning community who had watched his journey to the top. At this point, Guanqi and Lep felt pretty done with the grind, so the three-way friendly rivalry between these runners came to a close. But just look how far it had taken them. With some self-reflection and a few good friends to have your grind alongside, really, anything was possible. But just because Guanqi and Lep had tapped out of the race, it didn't mean Skate was anywhere close to done. In fact, he was just getting started.
Sheesh.
As February passed and Hollow Knight entered its 7th year, he was starting to sweep all of the comsobs Lep had previously dominated. And then, Skate went back to doing runs.
This is fucking dedication. Like, it's insane. Brother, this is insane. .31:43. Skate had done it yet again. This run left him even more motivated than before to continue. He had proved to himself just how possible 7,000 fucking
all he
runs.
needed to make it happen was another solid run with some better RNG. So as June ended and July began, he dedicated himself fully to the grind one last time. Day after day and attempt after attempt he tried. A pace loss to Umu here, a death to Den here, a THK that didn't cooperate. All of this was standard at this level of any percent, and Skate remained undeterred. Across half a month and over 200 run attempts, he relentlessly grinded runs and segment practice. And then, on July 15th, 2024, on run attempt number 7,464, Skate would get this run. It started out unassuming, yet really strong, with an impressive 327 Vengeful Spirit. Skate got a nice first spit Balder, a 50% chance, and only lost a little bit in the green path segment due to a slightly slow Hornet pattern. Dropping through Fungal cleanly, Skate performed this slightly faster Fireball Epogo, an evolution of the one found by Fireborn back in 2019. Once again, he had made a comparison on his timer that added up to a 31:40, which meant he was on pace so far to beat the decasecond barrier. And it kept getting better, with smooth sailing through the Blue Lake, and upon Dreamnail a staggering time of 12:43, one that was absolutely unthinkable a year or so prior to this. Skate showed immense precision in the upcoming transition Walkling storage, as he chained the glitch upon landing, traversing the entire room in one swift motion. As he approached the Watcher Knights, he played it insanely well. Now, things were interesting. He was already 8 seconds ahead into Watcher Knights, which meant that this run could be something truly special if the fight allowed him through. Sadly, the Watcher Knights fight wasn't quite up to Skate's standards, with some unfortunate rolls and 1 or 2 stumbles on his part.
That was terrible.
Still, his pace was relatively unscathed on the other side. Now, Rafters was the next hurdle, and it went insanely cleanly, matching his comparison closely. Skate showed off a nice culmination of the efforts of his, Lep's, Guanqi's, and so many other runners segment labbing in a flashy array of optimized Crystal Peak cycle climbs, saving time once again by the end of the split. Now a whole 10 seconds ahead of the record, it was all down to Umu. And for a second, just think of the hundreds of attempts he had gotten to this point in the past, only to get unlucky, or make a mistake, or throw to nerves. Was this going to be one of them? Umu had an answer for him. It wasn't great, with 2 more slow attacks than necessary, but it was passable. As Skate performed the Walkling storage across the acid, he knew that this run still had potential. A first try QGA only made it better. At this point, played well, this run had the potential to skip the 31-3x range altogether. He played an aggressive Petro Arena, traversed the rest of Queen's Gardens, and entered Deep Nest. This time, unlike his previous records, he had played the Gardens segment flawlessly, which meant he could skip the quit out heal and go for the fast but scary 4 HP Den with his full soul canister in hand. He was going to need to play really well though, because there were 2 obligatory damage tanks for the Devouts. Put shortly, he did, getting a clean Devout skip and good spider dodges. He even used a damage tank to cut this corner slightly faster. They do say health is just another resource after all. And after absorbing Hera, Skate was an earth-shattering 11 seconds ahead of his own world record. The pace of a lifetime. And now, all he needed was to get a THK pattern good enough to do it, and execute that pattern to the very peak of his abilities. Oh, I've always wanted to do this! I've been holding off on this for the entire video. All his fellow runners in the speedrunning community had taken note of what was occurring in his stream, and they poured into the chat to watch it unfold. As he entered THK, he had saved another 2 seconds, putting him 13 seconds ahead of world record, and shockingly making this a potential 31-2x pace. The Hollow Ds were spamming, the adrenaline was flowing, and the time save was plentiful. Only a single question remained. Was Skate King up to the task? Yeah, you could say that.
Holy shit. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy
16 seconds! 16 seconds!
Skate was dumbfounded.
16
With an absolutely
seconds!
insane THK fight, only 0.2 seconds off the best fight ever performed, also by Skate, he had saved another 6 seconds on his world record.
Wait, was it 6?
The final time was 31 minutes and 24 seconds. A world record by 18 entire seconds. And to this day, the fastest ever run of any percent NMG ever performed. That's right. Even over a year and a half on from that fateful day of July 15th, 2023, no one has beaten Skate's record. Like Pest before him, Skate was so far ahead of the curve that top-level competition of the category simply died for a time. That was until a runner named BlueSR started running the category.
Wait, wait a minute, that's him.
I did start running any percent recently and just got a 32 though, so yay me. Across 2024, things did start happening though. As of today, 9 runners have achieved a 31 in any percent. Some of them have started creeping even closer. In fact, Nebula just recently overtook Lep's second place spot with an impressive 31-37, and Skate has also made his return to the category. I think we might just see a new world record happen soon. Because while Skate's 31-24 is incredibly hard to beat, the community summer best is now at a 30-29, mostly thanks to the contribution of these newer runners. Could we realistically see the 31-minute barrier be broken? One thing I've learned in speedrunning is to never underestimate what a community can accomplish. After all, in only 8 years of the game being out, the achievements kinda speak for themselves. However, it seems like a much bigger thing might be on the verge of occurring for any percent. Let's talk about it a little bit. And yes, before you say anything, this is sequel bait. In the second half of 2024, an updated tool-assisted speedrun of the category was published by Javier, with a final time of just 25:29. While this run had a lot of tasks-only time save, such as the Kling Kling Walkling storage that allows you to get the glitch on any wall, there was a pretty glaring difference in the run. Well, it doesn't get Vengeful Spirit. Instead, the run performs an itemless Baldur kill and skips the Crossroads segment entirely, getting Fury of the Fallen to supplement damage instead. The itemless Baldur is essentially impossible for humans to perform, but a setup utilizing the Shade's damage knockback has been found. Still incredibly hard, a good bit slower.
That's what we saw! That's what we saw!
But definitely possible. So after dismissing the idea for months, runners started toying with the idea of this route in January of 2025. And after timing each room and observing strats, a number started floating around. This route has the potential to save up to 20 seconds. Well, that sounds about well and dandy then. Let's all start running it. There's a problem here. The route is really hard. Like,
really hard.
And then, a runner by the name of BlueSR did the impossible. No, I'm still joking. But the existence of this much harder theoretical route poses a lot of interesting questions for the future of the category. Lep19 has just recently returned and started to do attempts with it.
He has! We've seen it and he just beat the world record.
Enough looking forward. Let's take a look back. In 8 entire years, Hollow Knight's any % NMG speedrun has come a really long way. From Spleen's first finished run of 1 hour 16 minutes.
Spleen just stopped. He didn't want that anymore.
And the adoption of the bare bones route, to the countless strat finds big and small. From the blink of an eye to a 20-second chunk, the times kept dropping thanks to the contributions of all of these runners. With a current world record of 31:24, it remains to be seen what will be next for any % NMG. Whatever happens, I'm sure it'll be really interesting. And that right there was the world record history of Hollow Knight any % NMG speedruns. Thank you for watching. Okay, wow. When I started working on this in late December, I didn't really expect it to go over 2 hours, but here we are. If you're still here and you enjoyed the video, thank you so much. It was really
to be fair though, I don't think we need to watch more. This was really good storytelling. There were some parts that could be cut out to minimize the runtime just a smidgen. But overall, it's a really good video. And of course, we've already, you know, put a little like there and subscribe to him. So yeah, really good video. And I guess we'll just react to the next video that will come out in maybe 2 months, because I mean, I don't think it should be that much longer, because I mean, we've seen Lep do the thing. We're not gonna react to his new world record, which is really insane. Well done to him. Holy fuck, you have to be determined to do all of this. But yes, this is a long react video. I thought I might as well just endure it all. Although if I'm gonna react to something this long again, it has to be something that is not the same visual at all times. But I mean, you know, let's see how well this video is gonna do. And it's harder to react the further on the video goes. But you know, it's really good. It's really good. So of course, thank you all so very much for watching. Oh yeah, wait, join my Discord. It's in the description below. So again, thank you all so very much for watching. The friendly stuff remind us to leave a like and subscribe to stay tuned for more. It helps a ton, so thank you in advance. And until next time, and 3, 2, 1, fades away.